number 14, and I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 14 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. Pursuant to the order of reference of Tuesday, April 11th, the committee is meeting to discuss the parliamentary duties in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. Before we start, I want to inform members that pursuant to the order of reference, the committee is meeting for two reasons. Number one, for the purpose of undertaking a study and receiving evidence concerning matters to the conduct of parliamentary duties in the context of COVID-19. Number two, to prepare and present a report to the House of Commons by May 15th on that said study. The order of reference also stipulates that only motions needed to determine witnesses and motions related to the adoption of the report are in order. Today's meeting is taking place by video conference, and the proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware, the webcast always shows the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. In order to facilitate the work of our interpreters and ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules for you to follow. Interpretation in this video conference will work very much like in a regular committee meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you are ready to speak, you can either click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, or you can hold down the space bar while you are speaking. When you release the bar, your mic will mute itself, just like a walkie-talkie. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. Should members need to request the floor outside of their designated time for speaking or questions, they should activate their mic and state that they have a point of order. If a member wishes to intervene on a point of order that has been raised by another member, they should use the raised hand function. This will signal to the chair your interest to speak. In order to do so, you should click on participants at the bottom of your screen, and when the list pops up, you'll see the raised hand function. Please click that. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you are not speaking, make sure your mic is on mute. To use the headsets, the use of headsets is strongly encouraged, and I believe today we may have everyone with headsets, so thank you for ordering your headsets and having them. It's definitely going to facilitate this meeting much better. Should any technical challenges arise, for example, in relation to interpretation or problems with your audio arises, please advise the chair immediately and the technical team will work to resolve them. Please note that we may need to suspend during these times as we want to ensure that all members get to participate fully. During this meeting, before we get started, can everyone click on their screen in the top right-hand corner and ensure they are on gallery view. With this view, you should be able to see all other participants in a grid view, and it will ensure that all video participants can see one another. During this meeting, we will follow the same rules that usually apply to opening statements and the questioning of witnesses during our regular meetings. Per routine motions of committees, each witness has up to 10 minutes for an opening statement, followed by the usual rounds of questions from members. Just as we usually would in a regular committee meeting, we will suspend in between panels in order for the first group of witnesses to depart and for the next panel to join the meeting. I'd like to welcome to this meeting, to their first panel, we have the Canadian Association of Professional Employees, and we have the International Association of Conference Interpreters. First, we will hear from the Association of Professional Employees. From there, we have Mr. Greg Phillips, the president. We have Katia Theroux, Director of Communications, and Nicolas Boys, the president of Local 900, and I believe on their behalf will be Mr. Greg Phillips. And yes, I see you there as well from the Association of Conference Interpreters. We have Nicole Guénon and we have Mr. Jim Thompson. You'll be up next after Mr. Greg Phillips. Mr. Phillips, you have 10 minutes to make your opening statement. Oh, do you have a question, Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I do not have the option on my screen to choose a floor channel.
Oh, yes, off would be the floor channel option.
I don't have any of those options at all on my screen.
Okay.
So maybe somebody could just look into that, and we can, well,
at the bottom of your screen,
our colleagues at Cape.
At the bottom of your screen, do you have participants, reactions, and interpretation listed at the bottom of your screen? If you take your arrow to the bottom, you may not be able to see it right now. Put your cursor.
I have my cursor. I've got that toolbar activated, and I have only participants and invite at the bottom of my screen.
Ah, okay.
So I'll,
Yes, hold on just a moment.
Okay.
Yes.
You could maybe get the other one to start, and we'll.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Thompson, we are going to look into it by the time your association has to speak. We'll start with the statement from the first member, and the technical team will try to help you out while we're doing that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Okay, let's start with Mr. Phillips, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me to testify today about the strain and injuries the government interpreters have been sustaining during virtual parliamentary meetings, and how it's hurting their ability to effectively champion our two official languages. My name is Greg Phillips. I am the National President of the Canadian Association of Professional Employees, also known as CAPE. Joining me today are a colleague and two CAPE representatives, Katia Thériault, she is the Director of Communications, Nicolas Bois, President, CAPE Local 900, and translator at the Translation Bureau, and Bastien Tremblay-Cousineau, who's a parliamentary interpreter, and he's also an OSH representative. I would like to greet the interpreters responsible for this meeting's interpretation services. Language professionals play an essential role in the application of the Official Languages Act, and I want to thank them for the important work they do in promoting our nation's linguistic duality. I also want to thank them for their exceptional work since the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis. The government has been in constant communications with Canadians about the pandemic, always relying on our language professionals to convey their updates in both official languages. Our interpreters have not missed a beat. CAPE is the third largest labor union representing federal public service employees. We represent nearly 18,000 economists, policy analysts, statisticians, researchers in the Library of Parliament, and analysts in the Office of the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Of most relevance today, we represent all 70 professional interpreters in the federal public service. We negotiate their collective agreements, and we defend their right to a safe and healthy workplace. We also take a stand when needed to fix their enduring labor-related problems. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought about a lot of changes in the way federal government operates. One of the most obvious changes is the steep increase in virtual sittings of committees and Parliament. Virtual parliamentary hearings and sessions are not new to the government per se. Interpreters know how to operate in this environment and can deliver exceptional interpretation services when the interpretation standards and conditions are respected. However, teleconferencing and video conferencing have been known to be challenging for interpreters for some time. Well before COVID-19, we had raised the problem with the Translation Bureau, with whom we enjoy a good relationship. Indeed, occasional technical glitches or poor compliance with interpretation standards and conditions have in the past prevented our interpreters from performing their duties to the best of their ability. They have also caused injuries, including very serious cases of acoustic shock. The current situation has created some urgency that has prompted an acceleration of our pursuit for remediation. CAPE is here to confirm the dramatic and exponential increase in injuries reported to us over a very short period of time. We can confirm that these incidents have been exacerbated by the exponential increase in the number of virtual meetings since the beginning of the confinement period. In fact, there have been more incidents reported between March 31st and May 1st of this year than for all of 2019. Or said differently, more than half of the injuries reported since the beginning of last year, 2019, to today have taken place in the last 3 weeks alone. Although not all incidents involve a serious injury or a visit to the doctor, the type and severity of symptoms felt by interpreters is very worrisome. This is not a normal situation. CAPE's labor relations officers, stewards, and government occupational health and safety representatives at Public Services and Procurement Canada, PSPC, can confirm the unusual increase in injuries reported by interpreters and the uncharacteristic nature of the trend since the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis. The people on whom you depend need urgent action on this matter. There is more to the situation. Interpreters are generally used to working multiple parliamentary sessions, assignments in one day, and to working many days in a row. As the Translation Bureau told your committee last week, the typical day for a parliamentary interpreter consists of 6 hours of interpretation. Virtual meetings are handled differently because the cognitive load is much heavier, which leads to more strain and more injuries. This means shorter assignments, shorter shifts, more interpreters going on sick leave for days or being permanently redeployed to other non-virtual assignments at their request. As a result, the pool of available interpreters to pick from is shrinking. We are getting close to our worst case scenario, which is that too many interpreters end up needing rest and healing at the same time. We fear interpreters are getting dangerously close to being unable to keep up with the demand and having to refuse assignments in too great numbers to find replacements. This would jeopardize the conduct of parliamentary activities. Nobody wants to get to the point where we no longer have enough available qualified interpreters to support parliamentary work. This would be a great disservice to all parliamentarians and to all Canadians. Last week, the Translation Bureau presented you with a general list of types of physical injuries and the interpreters have been sustaining during these virtual meetings. We can confirm that these injuries reported are impairing our members' hearing and concentration which are the instruments they critically need to do their job and hold this profession. If you recall, the main symptoms of those injuries include tinnitus, residual and long-lasting beating sound, pounding and sharp bursts in the eardrum, headaches, nausea, sleeplessness, mental fog, and an inability to concentrate. This is why longer breaks are needed and why interpreters go on sick leave. CAPE is also here to confirm the causes behind those injuries and the extreme exhaustion and the fact that with everyone's support, they can be eliminated or mitigated. Those causes include poor audio and video quality because of bandwidth or connectivity issues. For example, using a Wi-Fi connection instead of a cable internet connection, or using a headset or a microphone, or not using a headset or a microphone. Disruption of usual lines of communication and logistical channels, which makes it more difficult for interpreters to receive and manage documents and speaking notes. And more generally, a video conferencing system that does not meet the international standards. There are solutions readily available to solve this problem, and we implore you to consider adopting the following corrective measures. Clearly communicate to clerks, MPs, and witnesses the best practices for video conferencing and material required for a successful participation in a parliamentary video conferencing meeting. Make sure committee chairs are aware of the standards so they can hold participants to them. Understanding that simultaneous interpretation might not be possible in some circumstances, and that other methods of interpretation, such as consecutive interpretation, might be necessary if conditions cannot be improved. Briefly go over the standards before each meeting. Make sure the video conferencing solutions used for parliamentary meetings are in compliance with ISO standards on remote interpreting, and ensuring everyone communicates with interpreters respectfully. Madam Chair and the members of the committee, in my closing argument, I want to reiterate the fact that interpreters are your main allies, albeit often invisible. They are an integral part of your parliamentary sessions. They ensure that the message you convey to your constituents and other Canadians are communicated in both official languages accurately and in real time. Good sound is what the interpreters rely on to do their work. When the working conditions lead to a deterioration of sound quality, the interpreters can't ensure as faithful, nuanced, and complete transmission of the meaning in the other language. Without interpreters, non-bilingual MPs would not be able to fully participate in parliamentary meetings, and Canadians would not be able to follow parliamentary proceedings in real time in the official language of their choice. It is my fervent hope that this committee will review how the virtual committee proceedings are conducted to ensure remediation. Thank you to the interpreters on this assignment today and for doing your very best under very challenging conditions. Thank you also to the committee members, and we look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you so much. Next, we will hear for 10 minutes or even under from Nicole Gagnon. And thank you for providing your speaking notes as well. We have made them available to everyone in the committee, and hopefully they'll be able to follow along. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your invitation. Some of you may represent the Canadian region. AIC is the only national professional association of federally accredited interpreters. They include both freelancers and Translation Bureau staff interpreters. Allow me first to present my colleague, Jim Thompson, and to thank my colleagues in the booth today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a bilingual nation. Two founding peoples, along with our Aboriginal hosts, have managed to build a great and independent country by working together. Of course, this project has not always been easy, but we have prevailed against heavy odds. This reality is written into the Official Languages Act and enshrined in the Constitution, which obliges.
Being just for a moment, I was thinking it may correct itself, and we do have the speaking notes. So I do want to let all the members know that an email was sent out with the speaking notes for Ms. Gagnon. So if you can take a look at those as well as we're going through this. But Mr. Clerk, there is some difficulty in hearing the interpretation right now because the volume is approximately the same for the English and the French currently.
Okay, Madam Chair, it's Justin Vave, the clerk of the committee. We perhaps you may want to suspend just for a few minutes, and we'll try to address the problem with the technicians here in the room. Hopefully, it should only take a handful of minutes. So just stand by, please.
If everyone can just stand by for a couple of minutes, we can suspend for maybe 3 to 4 minutes. wanting to, before we resume, Ms. Gagnon, I was wondering if you can go down to your interpretation. This it has helped to resolve the problem in the past. I'm not sure if it will in this instance, but let's give it a try. If you go down to your interpretation setting, please set your setting to the French channel. If you, I guess I should ask you, do you plan on delivering your entire opening statement in French?
Madam Chair, I'll be making my statements in both English and French.
Okay. If you can, this may help resolve the problem. While you're doing the French portion of your statement, if you can put your language onto French and then pause just for a brief moment. When you switch into English, if you can switch your language into English, that will help. It may help differentiate between the two volumes. When you have it on floor, sometimes the volume is the same. So that's a kink that needs to be worked out. And we're working that out with we're going to try to work it out with the platform that we're using right now.
Entendu, Madame la Présidente.
Understood, Madam Chair.
Everyone is back, then maybe we can get started. It looks like everyone is here. So we will carry on with the meeting and the suspension is over. Yep, looks like everyone's turning their cameras on. Okay, I call this meeting back to session and we'll continue to hear from Madame Gagnon. Thank you.
So I was saying, this reality is written into the Official Languages Act and enshrined in the Constitution, which obliges the federal government to provide access of equal quality to its proceedings in both official languages. Quality of communication from or access to our national institutions cannot be set aside for one or another of our official languages, especially during times of crisis. We know from experience that our foundational partnerships cannot be taken for granted. That is why AIC Canada's #1 issue is the quality of interpretation in the national houses of parliament, the highest institutions of our democracy. As you know, many are concerned that the French language is being set aside during the pandemic. Provincial premiers are being called out for failing to ensure messages are delivered in the mother tongue of their French-speaking residents, and the Prime Minister himself has allowed that English-only labels and signage are acceptable in certain circumstances. Independent Senator René Cormier recently said, and I quote, "Nothing justifies the lack of respect for our two official languages." We concur and submit that when it comes to access to the proceedings of the federal government, and in particular Parliament, nothing should be permitted to compromise quality. We submit that in the rush to get the virtual Parliament, including committees, up and running, compromises have been made that combine to undermine the quality of interpretation of your proceedings.
Compromise relates to technology. Witnesses from the Translation Bureau have stated that quality has not been compromised by technology during the past 6 weeks. They advised your committee last week that the Bureau encourages interpreters to interrupt service when they cannot hear, and therefore quality is not being undermined. This blanket statement does not reflect what is really happening. Let me explain. We endeavor to provide you with the seamless service you are used to. Even if encouraged, most interpreters are reluctant to interrupt service every time they are faced with bad sound quality. Instead, we will edit out some of what is being said because we haven't heard properly. Some of the original message is lost. In many cases, more than what interpreters deem acceptable. We are trained to provide accurate and faithful interpretation of the speaker's words with all the nuances. After all, no parliamentarian wants to be misquoted. This is one of the ways quality is being compromised. It is disrespectful to the institution of Parliament to show up in the chamber wearing jeans and a t-shirt. There are rules that prevent this. It is equally disrespectful to Canada's linguistic duality to show up for virtual assemblies without the equipment needed to be heard properly. There should be rules preventing this too. Everyone participating in a virtual committee meeting or other virtual assembly must wear a headset with a built-in microphone, and they must be connected to the internet by a hard Ethernet wire, no Wi-Fi. We ask your committee to recommend that this become a mandatory requirement for all virtual events. The second compromise has to do with bidirectionality. Like you, interpreters have a mother tongue. They usually work from their second language into their mother tongue. For example, an English-speaking MP will be interpreted into French by a Francophone interpreter. Interpreters are capable of interpreting into their second language. This is known as bidirectional interpreting. But most interpreters who work into their second language offer a service of lesser quality because of accent, syntax, vocabulary, for example. For this reason, AIC Canada strongly advises against this practice when interpreters are working in Parliament for broadcast, unless they have been deemed qualified to do so. By its own admission, the Translation Bureau has no shortage of accredited interpreters, so interpretation into a second language is not necessary. Parliament is sacrosanct and should only receive top-notch interpretation services. Le troisième
The third compromise, fatigue and injury. Zoom fatigue is magnified for interpreters because they are working with new technologies that are not yet perfected for remote interpretation. Thus, in addition to normal challenges faced by interpreters, they are not getting adequate sound, they lack visual cues, and we know that body language represents 70% of communication. They are presently working alone in the booth and not as a team because of physical distancing. Interpreters are straining and concentrating so hard that they are actually suffering injuries such as lasting headaches, earaches, tinnitus, hypercusis, and excessive fatigue. We are in this for the long haul and must be mindful of the health and safety of government-accredited interpreters because remote interpretation is much more taxing. This critical resource must be managed carefully during this time of crisis because it could be a long time before normalcy returns and quality interpretation services must prevail.
Lastly, I wish to bring to your attention a force that has been eroding the quality of interpretation of federal proceedings for years. It may come as news, but it is the policy of the federal government to allow a double standard of quality to exist in the interpretation of its proceedings. We held out hope that this would change when in early 2017, then Minister Judy Foote called on the President of the Treasury Board to fix this problem. 3 years later, nothing has been done. On the one hand, there is a high standard of quality that is delivered by federally accredited interpreters. The Canadian federal accreditation is recognized worldwide as the gold standard of quality. The Translation Bureau hires and contracts only those who hold this credential. Parliament is served by the Translation Bureau in keeping with this high standard. But every other government department and agency, including the PMO and Minister's Office, can and do hire unqualified interpreters through private language service companies. Therein lies the double standard. Due to the pandemic, this practice has become increasingly widespread because of growing demand for interpretation of meetings and events held over phone lines. Last year, the Translation Bureau stopped offering over-the-phone interpretation because typical audio levels are so dismal that quality interpretation is near impossible. Moreover, in the case of hybrid meetings where you have people meeting in person and others joining over the phone, interpreters risk sustaining the most serious of injuries, acoustic shock. If the federal government truly values our linguistic duality, it will end this double standard forthwith. As you know, the association is committed to making virtual meetings of Parliament work. With this in mind, I draw your attention to a summary of recommendations we urge your committee to adopt. With thanks, honorable members, we conclude our presentation. Jim Thompson and myself will both be pleased to answer your questions.
Thank you. We appreciate both of the opening statements, and we will move on into our 6-minute questioning round started by Mr. Richards.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I guess well, I guess whichever of you wants to answer it, I suppose. But can I just start maybe with just for everyone's information and for the sake of everybody, to be an interpreter with the Translation Bureau, there's obviously some very high standards that are involved in that. Can you just briefly just give us all a rundown of what those qualifications are in order to be an interpreter?
If I may.
Sure, please.
I would turn it over to Bastien Tremblay-Cousineau, who is actually an interpreter, so he could give you exactly what the qualifications are if you're comfortable answering that, Bastien.
Of course, thank you for the question. All interpreters working for the Translation Bureau have a master's in conference interpretation, and all interpreters working for the Translation Bureau have to later pass an accreditation exam that is administered by the Translation Bureau and that is recognized worldwide as the gold standard for accrediting interpreters.
Okay, thank you. So how deep would the pool be of interpreters that are available and qualified to work at Parliament? I mean, obviously, we've heard that there is an increase in the number of interpreters needed to be able to do these kinds of proceedings that are virtual or hybrid or others. You know, if we were to have, you know, a number, and I'm sure this probably exists now, that are unable to work for a variety of reasons related to COVID. And we're now hearing, of course, that there's been a huge increase in the number of workplace injuries. Are we in a situation where we could be getting thinned right out here, and in a situation where we wouldn't have enough interpreters available?
That is the ongoing concern. There's about 70 staff interpreters working in official language. There's another dozen working in foreign languages and sign languages. And out of the 70 staff interpreters working in official languages, 40 are during the pandemic, there are about 40 interpreters that are unable to work because of childcare or health issues. And so then there are approximately 17 freelance interpreters that are, there's about 60 accredited freelancers based in the National Capital Region that for all languages that are not official languages interpreters, but are willing to work for Parliament.
And to make it clear, my understanding is, and I want you just to verify this for me, although we're all meeting virtually, I believe the requirement for the interpreters is still that they are working from booths in West Block or from you know, somewhere on the Hill for these virtual parliamentary proceedings, and that's something that's being required and is necessary. Is that accurate?
That's my understanding, that they're still working in the booths on Parliament Hill, but they used to work in isolation. Well, not in isolation. They used to work in the same booth. They would be close by. Now, because of COVID and physical distancing, they're not in the same booth, but they're still working out of the booths.
Sure, and the reason I obviously asked that is, you know, you're mentioning how many are available in the National Capital Region. You know, the obvious question that someone might ask is, well, why not source people from elsewhere in the country? But we are, because of the expectation. I mean, I guess tell me what the reasons are that is the case, and if that's necessary, that they are working from West Block, and why that is.
my belief is just based on demand for services. So the interpretation services, there's a lot more people that need to interpretation services here in Ottawa because this is where the government is. There might be a lot less need for interpretation services out of Calgary or other places where maybe there's not the demand for it.
Okay. Now, Ms. Gagnon.
If I could just add.
Sure. Briefly.
Yeah, I was just wanting to add that
have we lost Mr. Thompson here?
Hello?
Okay,
Hi.
no, he is back.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
I was just, Mr. Richards, I wanted to let you know that because the Zoom platform is not a standalone platform that interpreters plug into via their own laptops, they need to go to a place, in this case, the Hill, where there is an interface that connects Zoom to the consoles that they normally work on. And that is largely the reason for them having to go to work in the West Block. Sure. And I think Nicole may want to add to that. I don't know.
Sure. Can I just, before you do that, and I'd like to hear about that,
yeah.
Because we were told by a representative of Zoom the other day that the interpretation could be done through their platform, and it sounds to me like you're telling me that maybe that's not the case. Just quickly before you answer that, and I'd like to let you do that, but could you also answer for me your association, the brief that you sent to our committee, and I'll quote from it. It says that there's conclusive proof that the quality of sound teleconferences provide never come close to the quality of sound needed for remote simultaneous interpretation. End of quote. I'm wondering if there's a research paper or a study or something where that, where you've pulled that from that you could table with the committee for us. So you can go ahead and give me a bit more information, or Ms. Gagnon if she'd like, but also if you could just let me know if there is something you could provide us on that quote as well.
If you can in 30 seconds, we're already over the time.
Nicole.
Thank you for that question, Mr. Richards. Yes, I realize that Mr. Mosley from the Zoom Corporation assured you that there was an interpretation functionality on the Zoom platform. That is true, but it is minimal. And in the case of the Government of Canada, specifically parliamentary services, although the House administration has adopted a Zoom platform, it has been modified, so to speak, in terms of because of security concerns, first and foremost, and the end-to-end encryption that is required. And secondly, there has been an interface developed that's been twinned with the Zoom platform, whereby interpreters can go into work and for you and do what it is they do day in and day out. And,
thank you, Ms. Gagnon. Next, we have Mr.
Chair,
yes.
Would you mind? Like I'd asked just about if there was a something they could table with the committee in relation to that quote from their paper. Would you be able to just allow them to just give us an answer no on that?
Oh yes. I thought I was a given. I probably can. Would you be able to table that for us, please?
We will endeavor to do so, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Mr. Turnbull, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to all the witnesses today for their statements. Really appreciate you. I wanted to say just first off, I think you're quite right that the work that many of our interpreters do is often in the background. But I just wanted to say how much you're valued and you're really an integral part of the functioning of Parliament. I want to acknowledge that and really thank you for the quality of interpretation that you've provided despite circumstances that have obviously been quite challenging. I know that our country has a dualist linguistic nature and history, and that's really important to all of us to preserve that. So just wanted to start with that. Thank you and acknowledgement for your hard work and the appreciation for the quality of interpretation and protecting that. With that said, I would never have thought that all of the improvements, situational improvements being made to Parliament's ability to operate would be, one that would cause injury to interpreters. So when I learned this, I was deeply concerned. I wanted to just ask for some clarification on some of the injuries that are resulting and how quickly people can recover from them. And, eventually we'll ask you another question, but in particular, how many people are getting tinnitus, for example? That seems like a pretty severe injury. And just wanted to ask you, of the number of interpreters, how many were afflicted with tinnitus, for example? Nicole, maybe, I don't know if you would be best, or Greg, maybe? Greg, why don't we start with you?
Okay, it's really hard. We can table it for sure. We can follow up with more precise numbers. The problem being is there's a lot of, it's to get an accurate count. Many interpreters might go home. They would have maybe experienced tinnitus, but not submit a report. They might not go see a doctor. They might just suffer through it and not tell anybody. I know the Translation Bureau is doing a thorough review of the incident reports that they've been received. So I think the Translation Bureau is coming back and they're going to be talking about it, but we can definitely endeavor to table something for you.
Thank you. I would appreciate that. It's certainly something that is a cause for concern. The other question I had is, could someone explain acoustic shock for us? Because I'm not really familiar with that as an injury. I've never had it before. I've actually never known anyone to have it. And obviously you would know more detail on that. And then could you also describe how, I think it was said in some of the remarks, I think Ms. Gagnon, it was your remarks, that said that hybrid meetings would pose the greatest shock or the greatest, risk for acoustic shock. Could you explain what it is and why hybrid meetings might pose greater risk?
Thank you very much for that question. I'd be happy to answer it to the best of my ability. Acoustic shock presents symptoms like a concussion, where you have headaches, nausea, difficulty, this fog we're talking about. And I'm sure you know that concussions are cumulative in impact over time. And so as you sustain one after the other, it takes a lot longer to recover from it. As to the statistics, I believe that CAPE is best placed to speak to that, because the staff interpreters are providing incident reports to the Translation Bureau. The Association of Conference Interpreters in Canada does not compile such statistics, but we are getting feedback from the membership to that effect, the tinnitus and hypersensitivity to loud noises and that kind of thing. And you had a second question as to hybrid meetings. Yes, they are the most serious of the issues, because when you're meeting in person, we are all familiar with that experience. What happens is that on top of that, you have people joining the call over the phone lines. And so you are dealing with different technologies. You have the equipment that's been in place for the in-person meeting. You have on top of that a layer of equipment that is being provided for interpretation. And then finally, you have the telephone equipment on top of all of that, to put it in simple terms. All of this is not necessarily compatible. Right. And when people are joining by phone, they can be joining on a landline, but there aren't too many of those left. Most of them are on cell phones. Some are in their car driving with a hands-held-free system. So it's the matter of the inputs. The inputs are various, and because of this, the quality of the sound is degraded and makes our work all the more difficult. And that is when you can have a feedback loop which causes acoustic shock.
Okay, thank you. Just really quickly, would you say since sort of virtual parliament under this global pandemic began, which I think is a gradual process, have improvements been made? So has the Speaker and House administration and others been listening to the feedback that you've given? It seems to me that some of the suggestions that you've made have actually already been implemented. So my impression is that House administration is working really hard to make sure that that we get the best quality interpretation. Would you say that, Ms. Gagnon, that improvements have been made?
In 10 seconds, please.
Improvements have been made in that, of course, the virtual parliament goes back to some 6 weeks now. Staff interpreters were working these sessions and reporting back to the Translation Bureau. And because of that, the Translation Bureau has been talking to the House administration. Freelancers only went back to the Hill last week, and after a week have been reporting back to their association as well about these issues that we've raised. And the association has talked to the Translation Bureau, and up the chain it goes. So yes, improvements are being made, but it's a very, very recent experience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up for questions, we have Ms. Norman Day, please.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the witnesses for their presentations. I just wanted to talk about what Mr. Turnbull said. Yes, improvements have been made, but this has been recent, which brings my next question. There might be even a faster pace of meetings in coming weeks, more virtual committees, parliament that will be virtual. With these improvements, do you think you'll be able to offer this service with this increased workload?
I mean, I believe that we do have the ability, but we'll have to wait and see what the workload actually entails. I know that the interpreters, they're dwindling, and if you increase it, there's going to be problems. And I think that it's a question that you might want to ask the Translation Bureau when they show up. I answered a question earlier, and where I outlined the exact numbers of interpreters, and that the fact that about 40 out of the 70 are on sick leave right now. Well, aren't able to work right now. Not just sick leave. There's other issues why they can't work right now. But so if everybody's able to wear the headsets, that people are able to, if all of our suggestions that I had outlined in my presentation come true, then I think it will extend and enable more interpretation to be handled. But things can't continue as they are right now.
If I can, Chair, I'd like to intervene. Chair, may I speak? I just wanted to add about what Mr. Phillips said, that injuries that interpreters experience, well, there are many of them, and there's a reduced number of interpreters. But I'd like to say that AIC has been listening and has adopted, well, the Translation Bureau rather has adopted basic measures in terms of contamination with the virus. But what's important for us now is our hearing health. If everyone does their share, I'd like to thank those members. And online today, I see that they're wearing their headsets. But if everyone believes in this and follows these measures, we'll be able to avoid injuries, and interpreters will be there for you. They aren't asking for any more than this. They want the virtual parliament to succeed. They're just asking for you to help them to do so. Thank you very much. My next question, well, I understood from what I heard that there's a greater pressure when people are interpreting from English into French because, well, would it be a support for interpreters if, for example, members who are French language mother tongue speak in French when they're able to do so. Certainly, Ms. Normandin. Right now, I would say that 75% of the work is from English into French, and only 25% is into English. That's just, I don't have any statistics on that. That's just my personal impression. Obviously, members are free to express themselves in the official language of their choice. If they want to speak in their second language, that is their right to do so. And of course, we do have to interpret them. But to answer your question, if Francophone members were speaking in French, of course, this would make the workload easier. Thank you very much. In terms of the interpretation system, I'm not sure if you're going to have this answer, but for example, I like to be able to hear in one ear the interpretation and also hear the floor at the same time and compare the two. Does the current Zoom system allow me to do this? So I'm wondering if you thought about a parallel system. For example, through the phone, you could have a headpiece, select the volume of the interpretation on one side, and also hear the floor on the other. It would avoid MPs from constantly having to change the channel back and forth. I can certainly try to answer your question, Ms. Normandin. All the technical aspects of this is not part of the Translation Bureau's mandate, nor are our association's mandate. We provide interpreters. The administration is in charge of the technical aspects and all these issues. Every time I want to speak today, I have to myself change the option on the console if I want to speak in French, and if I want to speak in English, I have to change the option once again. You saw that during my speech. It increases the work that I have to do. But in terms of MPs who like to hear both the floor and the interpretation, the platform does not allow this. And I would not advise using the phone because there could be compatibility issues with the console. Also with the headset that you'd be using and the phone nearby, there could be issues. I'm not sure if I have time for another question, but if so, right now with the virtual parliament, what is the worst case scenario that would undermine bilingualism? What is the worst problem in terms of that?
One of the worst problems that we could face right now is not fixing the problems that we've outlined. Both AIC and CAPE have outlined, and that more interpreters have to go on long-term sick leave because they can no longer perform their duties.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. I've given everyone a little bit extra time on this round just because we had some difficulties. And next up is Ms. Blaney.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for all the witnesses today. I appreciate your testimony and your interventions. First question for me is if we could actually ask for the international standards for interpreters in video conferences to be tabled with the committee. I just want to make sure that's reflected in the report. Can I get that?
They're available for download for a cost online. We can certainly give you the ISO numbers that will help you, but there is a charge to that. So if the chair would like to contact us to let you know what the appropriate ISO numbers are so you can download them, we'd be more than happy to help.
Okay, thank you so much. That's helpful. So I guess, one of the things that I heard very clearly is that the microphones and having a proper headset on makes the sound much clearer for the interpreters, as well as having hardwired internet. I'm just wondering, would it be useful to make that mandatory for one? And the second part is, are all headsets created equally, or is there a standard that we should have set to make sure that the interpreters can hear us? And I owe it to anyone.
Madam Chair, if I may, this is Nicole Gagnon. I would thank you, Ms. Blaney, for the question. For the mandatory, whether it should be mandatory or not to wear the headsets, absolutely. It's appended to our brief, we make recommendations to that effect, whereby the headset must be mandatory, as well as a hardwired internet connection. And you're quite right, headsets are not all equal, and recommendations can be made to that effect as well. We'd be pleased to provide you with that as to what we feel is best. What the House administration is, I believe, handing out headsets to all MPs, and we urge you to wear them.
Okay, perfect.
I would
Thank
simply
you.
add to that, if I may, that it's difficult for the, you have to consider the witnesses when you're doing that, because not every witness wouldn't necessarily have an appropriate headset like this one. So when you're making the rules and you're considering that point, please consider the witnesses as well.
Thank you for that. That's helpful. So, Mr. Phillips, in your testimony, you talked about the increase of strain and injuries on interpreters, and I really appreciate you also explaining in one of your interventions that a lot of the interpreters are not always choosing to disclose the challenges that they're facing, and of course, really just trying to deliver the work that is so desperately needed, and I just want to appreciate that. But what I understood is that you said between March the 31st to May 1st, of this period of time, you have seen more strain and injuries claimed than in the whole of 2019. And I just want to make sure if you could just speak to that a little bit, and also confirm that you will be tabling those numbers for the committee to review. You have to unmute.
That is also a technical glitch I'm also experiencing at this time. Yes, I think I said it in a couple different ways. There's two different ways to that I have put it, but there are. I'm trying to find it quickly, but I'm not used to video conferencing. But yes, so what I'm saying is more than half has happened in the last 3 weeks than has happened in the last year and 4 months,
okay.
5 months.
And you'll be able to table that information with the committee?
Yeah, for sure. And I know that I have a very good relationship with Lucy Seguin, who's the president of the Translation Bureau. And so she and I can talk about those to get some better numbers to you.
Okay, thank you so much. So you also spoke about how the pool of interpreters are shrinking with people having to face the realities of COVID-19. And I understand that there's a very high level special skill set and criteria that interpreters have. I'm just wondering, where, if we're running low on numbers, how do we get more? And are there people appropriately trained for that we can access? And I open that to all of you.
If I may, Madam Chair, Nicole Gagnon speaking. There are the staff interpreters. As I explained, the past 5 weeks, staff interpreters have been working in extremely difficult conditions, have sustained injury, have become excessively fatigued, and of course that is to be understood. They were out there from the very beginning, trying to put things into place, and they would have been exposed to more dangerous situations. Since that time, you are wearing the headset. People are becoming more aware of what needs to be done or not done as we become more savvy when it comes to video conferencing. And now, as of last week, the Translation Bureau is calling in freelance interpreters to lend a hand to their colleagues on the Hill. I believe that as we improve the working conditions, if the headset and the hardwired connection are mandatory, that will protect the hearing of the interpreters. It will allow for better sound, and you would not be losing more interpreters. If anything, the situation would stabilize if the working conditions are good for them. And I mean by that working conditions in terms of proper sound, no acoustic shocks, no sustained injuries, no excessive fatigue as well.
And the last part is just there was a bit of talk about sometimes you cannot do simultaneous and consecutive interpreting would be more effective based on some issues. I'm just wondering if you could tell us when would that be appropriate? Just thinking of how many rural and remote MPs we have that may not have the best level of internet accessibility.
Well, it's a very good question about when it is. I think with the time allotted today, I think we could probably put some pen and paper, and table something to you about when we would think it would be appropriate between the two, just in the matter of saving time.
Okay, that's all the time we have. And I wanted to get some agreement among members. I wanted to get some agreement among members before we carry on, or if we carry on, into round 2 of questioning. The speaker and the House leadership team is ready to go on, but they're also willing to wait for about 15 minutes or so if you would like to carry on to round 2 of questions. But I would suggest if we do that, that we'd have to, like we've done in previous panels, cut down the time for round 2 to perhaps 3 minutes for the questioning for the first 4 questioners, and then perhaps 1 minute for each for the last 2 questioners. Can I have agreement for that, or would you like to move on to the speaker at this time?
Je suis d'accord, je suis prête à donner.
I'm in agreement, and I'm willing to give my 1 minute to Ms. May as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Would you like to cut the meeting here or this panel here, or carry on?
I would like to carry on.
Okay, seeing as go ahead, please.
I just wanted to merci à Madame Normand.
I'd like to thank Ms. Normandin. It's so nice of her to do this, and I'm sorry for being late for this meeting because of technical difficulties. And so I will leave questions to others instead.
Okay, seeing as at least one member wants to carry on, we'll just carry on. So Mr. Duncan, for 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you for our witnesses for being here. I think it's good that we've had this follow-up today from some of the management team speaking last week, and I don't begrudge everybody. I know everybody is trying, but it's good to get into the weeds of some of these challenges that you've got in the short term, and frankly, ones have not just existed here with COVID, but I think have highlighted it and expanded it the last little while. I'll agree, with the point Madame Normandin made from the block about us not being at 100% capacity even right now, where I know we're having some committees meet. We're meeting virtually a few days a week. But I know one of the things that I've seen a challenge is that as a behind the scenes aspect is our caucus advisory committees. So just outside of our regular caucus meetings, as we discuss specific portfolios, not having the translation there is certainly a challenge for members and staff that are working as impromptu translators as best they can, where they can. I just want to build a little bit on the numbers again to clarify where we're at in terms of the issue here with staffing levels. As we mentioned, there would normally be 70 interpreters, but we're down to 40 right now with circumstances. But then there's 30 freelance that have come on. Mr. Phillips, is the challenge there where there's a hesitation to have additional staffing come in, or is it an accreditation issue? What's some of that background again, just to make sure we get that right of what's going on that way?
I think Madame Gagnon would also have some very important things to say about that, and I don't want to, but for us, the major problem is the cumulative impact of the injuries. So minor injuries, continued minor injuries can build up over time, and that's a major concern of ours that will come into play with this. So it's not a situation, it's hard for us to say whether, how quickly are people going to become injured and unable to work. So, and just to clarify, there's 70 interpreters working in the official languages from the Translation Bureau. 40 of those are unable to work right now. So there's 30 that are working, just to clarify the numbers.
Thank you, appreciate that. Ms. Gagnon?
Yes, and I would like to add that is correct. What Mr. Phillips just pointed out about the 70 interpreters that work for the Translation Bureau as employees. There are about 30 to 35 accredited freelancers accredited by the Government of Canada that can be called upon to come and work on the Hill. They regularly work on the Hill. They just haven't since COVID-19 and until the startup of the virtual parliament. They are ready. They are without work basically because everything else in the country has been canceled, any other meetings, and so they are willing to come forward and help out their colleagues.
And I'll just mention in my quick time too, but the bidirectionality, I'm hoping that some of our work can be too, is some measures to help. For an example, if we have hybrid meetings of some sort, maybe have a policy to say the interpreter, there be one person that does the in-person translation and have a setup where there could be another that's doing the remote aspect. So that shock aspect, as you mentioned, going back and forth, I'm very interested in working on that and making sure we address those, not only from a social distancing perspective within the Hill, but a health and safety perspective of you.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Gerritsen.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's great to have you folks on today, and I really appreciate the time that you've taken to spend with us. Mr. Phillips, I just wanted to go to you first. In the information that you'll be tabling, I understand that there are 40 people who are off right now, but I think you said before that a lot of those people could be accredited or attributed to, childcare or whatnot as a result of what's going on. When you provide the information to us in terms of how many people have been experiencing any incidents, any workplace incidents, can you also give us the before picture as well, so we know what it was like prior to this?
We'll have to rely on some of the information that the Treasury Board, not the Treasury Board, sorry, the Translation Bureau would provide, because some of our members, when they submit an incident report, they don't submit it directly to us, the union, they submit it to their employer. So we don't necessarily get all those statistics from the employer. So it would be something that you'd have to talk with, we'd have to be in discussion with the Translation Bureau about.
So you might not be getting them from now either. Are you getting them all right now?
We get some. It's a very tight-knit community, and they do speak to one another, but my background is statistics, and I like the pure numbers, so I don't have the pure 100% numbers to stand behind. It's from our end, it's more anecdotal. The Bureau itself would have the real numbers.
We need those numbers to look at if we can get that. My other issue that I wanted to talk about was this issue of the headsets. I just want to understand, is the issue having a headset, or is the issue having a proper microphone that is this close to your face? What are we actually looking for here?
Clarity of speech.
Clarity of speech. So right now I'm talking to you using my headset, and now I'm talking to you using a $250 microphone that's meant for podcasts. Is the clarity of speech different between the two of those?
We'd have to talk to the interpreters in the booth.
Okay. And I'll tell you where I come at from this. I don't like wearing headphones because I actually have tinnitus in my right ear, and I attribute it to a lot of wearing headphones, in particular when I was younger. And so my preference is not to wear headphones. And I'm wondering if there is an alternative to making sure that quality of sound gets through, but not necessarily forcing people to wear headphones, because I genuinely believe that, if I understand from you, that the issue here is quality of sound that you're receiving, not what I'm hearing through the headset. Is that correct?
I would say that that's correct. It's the quality of the sound from the microphone. So not everybody has a microphone like you showed. Sure. This is an easy solution that a lot of people can have, and it's easy to standardize, but a proper microphone like what you demonstrated would probably be sufficient. It's the hearing of our members, not how it gets to them, but it's the sound quality.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Phillips.
I'd just like to add, check out our recommendation, because it includes specifications as to the hertz of that are delivered by your microphone.
Okay, thank you. Next up for the Conservatives, who do we have? I didn't.
Sorry, I believe it was going to be Mr. Richards.
Okay, Mr. Richards, 3 minutes, please.
Following up with the interpreters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bear with me a second. I have to put the headset on here. Okay.
There we go. Let's explore, I guess, the workplace injuries that you both referenced a little bit in your opening remarks, and has been talked about a little bit since. As I understood it, what we've seen is really in essentially the last few weeks, there's been more workplace incidents or injuries than there was in the 66 weeks prior to that, going back to the start of 2019, which would be like a 22-fold increase in the number of workplace injuries. Is that correct? And can you maybe elaborate? I mean, I know you've elaborated on it a bit, but could you maybe elaborate a bit more on this and how it relates to the increased requirements? I'm not sure who wants to answer, but whoever would like to.
Well, Mr. Phillips has pointed out to you that basically the Translation Bureau could provide you with those statistics, but it makes sense that there's a greater number of injuries at this time because we're into virtual parliament. Up until COVID-19, there was some remote interpretation being done, but it wasn't steady. It wasn't every day, day in, day out. And so as the interpreters are working in remote day in and day out, it is normal that they would sustain more injuries, not acceptable, but it explains the phenomenon in part. It also has to do with the interpreters were testing the systems. And I can only insist yet again when it comes to what's been raised about using the headphones, the quality of the mic. What is important is that we standardize what everyone who's participating is using to connect to the platform, because every time someone is left to his own device, they're not necessarily compatible. And so the interpreters either do not get the quality of sound they need to do the work, or they sustain injury because they're not.
Okay, understood. Can we maybe just talk a little bit about, so like right now, you know, it's quite a modified situation for Parliament. I mean, obviously, there are you know, virtual sittings for little portions of the day, a couple days a week. There are, I don't know if it would be roughly about a quarter of the committees maybe of Parliament that are sitting. If that was to be something where it was expanded and sort of or on a more permanent basis, and I know that's not what we're talking about here, but you know, just because this is the conversation we're having, if all of the committees of Parliament were to be sitting, if Parliament was to be sitting virtually every day of the week, these kinds of things, if that was a decision that was made, given what you've told us about the difficulties already being faced with the extra interpreters required and what that's leading to in terms of injuries, like what would that look like for interpreters? Would that be a feasible situation?
We're over time now, Mr. Richards. Thank you, though. I just wanted you to be able to finish at least your thought. Next, we have Mr. Finnegan, and if you don't need the full 3 minutes, that would be appreciated to the speaker, and everybody is waiting to switch on for the next panel. Mr. Finnegan.
Alors, merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd also like to thank the interpreters for the essential work that they're doing. As chair of the committee, I remember last year or the year before that it did occur that interpreters would be injured. It occurred several times in our committee, so this is nothing new. But the question that I have is whether there are injuries that members of parliament can have, and if not, why is it only occurring to interpreters? I'd like to have your explanation in that regard.
Mr. Phillips.
The interpreters that are experiencing the problems because of the nature of their work, they have to sit into a booth, they have to listen to you speak. They have to also speak, so they're speaking at the exact same time that you're speaking. And then the sound quality amongst that, it's just the reason is that interpreters have to pay so much attention to what you're saying, translate the tone and also the message that maybe not a member of parliament would have to do. When you're sitting there, you're not thinking while the other person's speaking, you're not translating in your head and trying to translate the tone and the message and everything else that's involved. So it's an all-inclusive situation. And then you go from your committee maybe back to your office while the interpreter goes to maybe another meeting. And so it's accumulation of all that over a long period of time.
I would just add that when interpreters are straining to hear, if somebody is connecting by phone or a cell phone from the back of a car, they turn up the volume. And in cases where there is feedback, the screech that you hear when you get too close to the microphone with your phone, the volume is up, the headsets are on, and that goes straight into the brain from the person who is trying to interpret you.
If I may, Mr. Finnegan, to answer your question about whether the MPs could sustain injury in a remote setting, yes, you could, because to the best of my knowledge, none of the major platforms out there provide hearing protection to anyone. The hearing protection the interpreters are getting is due to and thanks to the technical team who are writing the consoles and are ensuring that all of the audio goes through a limiter compressor, so there is no possible damage or little damage in terms of acoustic shock. This is the most serious injury, again, sustained by the interpreter.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the time we have. Since the speaker is waiting, Ms. Blaney, do you want to take your 1 minute or?
Sure. Just 1 minute, Madame Gagnon. I just wanted to ask you specifically about the double standard that you've identified. And you talked about other departments, government departments, including the PMO's office, using uncertified interpreters. I'm just wondering if you could explain what the risk could be in that.
Well, thank you for that question. As we explained in our brief, and we've spoken to this in the past, we were on the Hill 3 years ago, the issue is basically that at one time, every government department, every agency, the Houses of Parliament went through the Translation Bureau to obtain the services of Government of Canada accredited interpreters. In 1995, the Translation Bureau became a special operating agency. And what happened then is that the Translation Bureau is still providing service to the Houses of Parliament and to those government departments and agencies who are willing to call on it. But government departments and agencies are free to call on the private market where there are accredited interpreters and non-accredited interpreters. And
Thank you so much, Ms. Gagnon. That's all the time we have for this panel. And thank you, Madame Normandie, for foregoing your 1 minute, and Ms. May as well. We're going to switch into the next panel and we'll suspend for 5 minutes exactly. So please be back in 5 minutes with your computers turned on, your videos turned on to take questions and hear the statements. Thank you. Getting that done makes things go smoothly for sure. Okay, welcome back. We're going to get started. So before we start, can everyone make sure that their video cameras are on and their screen is clicked onto the gallery view, please? So the top right-hand corner. I don't think I need to go into too much more detail today. Basically, some of the rules that we've been going through before, I'll recognize you, the speakers by name. Please click on the icon to unmute yourself before you speak. And of course, you can also press the space bar in order to speak, and then releasing the space bar will put your mic back on mute if you choose to use that option. Please remember to address all comments through the chair. Speak slowly and clearly, and your mic should be on mute at all times. Headsets are strongly encouraged, like we've been saying all along, and we know from our last panel as well, but I know that all our witnesses here today know these rules quite well because they've been using them in the special COVID-19 committee meetings as well. And so without further ado, I'd like to welcome our witnesses back. The Speaker of the House, Mr. Anthony Rota, if we can start with your statement first. And before we do so, I also wanted to point out that Mr. Speaker Rota has also sent to the committee a letter on Friday. You may want to take a look at that if you haven't already. And thank you for sending the committee that letter as well. You may choose to reference that, I'm sure, in your opening statements. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much to you all. Thank you, Chair, and all honorable members of the committee for your invitation to reappear today as you continue your study of parliamentary duties and the COVID-19 pandemic. As I explained in my previous statement to the committee, your challenge is to consider and recommend how the House and its members can perform their roles of advancing legislation and holding the government to account while observing the necessary health precautions during the current pandemic. And also formulating recommendations in this respect.
The committee's proceedings with interest over the past 2 weeks, as you have heard presentations and posed questions to witnesses who have provided important evidence. Today, I would like to offer some suggestions on how the House of Commons could adjust these practices in light of the two operating functions. One, as a deliberative assembly engaged in debate, and the second, as a decision-making assembly on legislation, resolutions, and orders. Through the first meetings of the Special Committee on COVID-19 on April 28th, most members have now participated in virtual deliberations. A virtual meeting is undeniably different from our usual in-person proceedings, but as we continue to adjust to using new technologies, we have seen it is possible to gather, debate, and deliberate in virtual meetings. As chair of the committee, I was impressed by this experience, both from the technological standpoint and the quality of the exchange. I took some notes that I want to share with the committee. They may provide some ideas for your consideration as you prepare your report. One issue that I think must be addressed has to be with the visual background in front of which members appear. Based on established practice, these backgrounds should be as neutral as possible and consistent with the nonpartisan environment of the chamber or committee. I have written to the chair of this committee expressing my concerns on this topic. Absent a decision of the House to the contrary, I will be advising members to refrain from including any background that is not consistent with the norms and standards followed within the parliamentary precinct.
I also noted that many of the House's practices surrounding its deliberations can readily accommodate virtual participation. For example, the chair is aided in recognizing members in debates by the rotation lists established by all the parties. This already brings a degree of predictability to the proceedings, something that is equally helpful to members and the chair participating through a virtual setting. However, other proceedings, such as question period, where fixed interventions at 35 seconds are relatively brief, might need some adjustment. In a virtual setting, time must be managed differently, and the exchanges between members asking and answering questions will not be the same as in an in-person sitting. These aspects of question period, notably the length of interventions and the unpredictability surrounding who will respond, are, however, matters of agreement among the parties or matters of practice, and could be adjusted to provide more time for questions and answers without requiring formal changes to the House's rules.
House's more routine practices could also be adapted to accommodate virtual participation in a straightforward manner and without changes to the rules. For example, the provisions that allow members to present petitions in the Special Committee on COVID-19 specifically ensure that such petitions are deemed presented in the House. In a virtual sitting, virtual sitting of the House, no change to the rules would be necessary for members participating virtually to present petitions. Members would simply continue to submit the petition certificates electronically. In short, as this committee decides what types of business it would like to see in the House debate on how, whether virtual or some hybrid of in-person and virtual, the procedural experts in the House administration will provide the committee with a more detailed proposal on how to accomplish this. In fact, the House administration has already begun work on how to support such an outcome, following the guiding principles I shared with the committee during previous appearances, or my previous appearance. On April 5th, I received a letter from the government House leader asking about the ability of the administration to support and facilitate virtual sittings of the House during these unprecedented times. In my response on April 8th, I stated that I had mandated digital services and real property in collaboration with procedural services to prepare the possibility of holding virtual sittings within 4 weeks. Similar to the approach to virtual participation of a number of international legislatures, including the United Kingdom, the administration has begun testing with simulations of hybrid model and will soon be ready to go beyond what has already been achieved with the virtual meetings of the special committee. This hybrid model would allow the deliberative aspects of the proceedings to continue throughout the pandemic with options for all members to participate. In this model, minimum changes to the House's rules would be required to allow its deliberations to continue, all while incorporating the members' virtual participation. Le défi.
As to the second operating function of the House, its decision-making authority, the challenge is greater. The standing orders that define this function are closely connected to the physical presence of members in the House itself. Therefore, a more extensive review is required of the procedural mechanisms involved. I'm informed that the House administration is ready to provide detailed advice and options once it has received some direction from the committee as to what kind of approach it would like to consider. The technology is available, and the rules can be adapted. And while the time to do this is tight, it can be done so to leverage the capabilities of a virtual sitting during the period of this pandemic.
Once this committee has determined the type of deliberations it would recommend to the House, that the House undertake during the current crisis, and how much virtual participation it would like to see in those deliberations, we can begin implementing as quickly as possible. Whatever the deliberations, they will involve the participation of all members, all the while respecting physical distancing and travel guidelines. Similarly, once the committee has decided how it would see the House exercise its decision-making function during this time, we will develop specific options for consideration. This would be in line with the incremental approach I strongly recommend in my initial appearance. With that, the clerk and I would be pleased to answer any questions you may have. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you so much, Speaker Rhoda. It's a pleasure to have you and your whole team back again. Sorry to keep you waiting, but thank you for your patience. I believe this is going to be a great opportunity for us to be able to verify and learn about some of the challenges you have and verify some of the testimony that we've heard from other witnesses before this committee. Sorry, I'm really glad you were able to make it in today as opposed to Thursday. I know you haven't had a lot of opportunity to test out the COVID-19 committee, but hopefully you'll be able to still do your best job to answer the questions that we have. We, just so that everybody knows, we do have the clerk of the House, like mentioned by the speaker. We do have the deputy clerk as well. We have the clerk's assistant. We have the law clerk as well. And I believe we also have somebody from the digital services team as well. Was that correct? Okay, so we will start into our first round of questions. Starting off, we will have Mr. Broussard, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for coming back today as we conclude our sessions on virtual sittings. Let me begin by saying that I can't overstate enough just how difficult this task is. Given the volumes of information that we've received from our various witnesses, and it will be difficult to come up even with some incremental report on these virtual sittings, given the fact that we've only had roughly 5 sessions to do this. So I appreciate that, and I also appreciate your advice, Mr. Speaker, and if you can tell by the backdrop, I've tried to keep it as neutral as I can, other than my old fire helmet and a picture of Jose Batista's bat flip. But I do want to start, Mr. Speaker, with you and Mr. Robert. One of the first witnesses we had was Dr. Raymond, who is the Executive Medical Advisor, Infectious Disease Prevention Control Branch for the Public Health Agency of Canada. And the first question I asked her, and she's also a specialist in epidemiological diseases, I asked her a question. At that time, there had been 3 sessions of in-person parliaments, and the daily briefings that had been held by both the Prime Minister and the ministers in West Block. And I asked her whether she thought that we were in full compliance with public health guidelines as it relates to physical distancing and other measures. So, Mr. Speaker, my question is to you and Mr. Robert. Given the experiences of limited parliaments, do you feel that we have been complying to physical distancing and other measures to the satisfaction of the Public Health Agency of Canada?
Thank you, Mr. Broussard, and I'll get started on this. And I understand that the time that you have been allotted to come up with some kind of, I guess, of a solution is very limited, and the number of meetings that you have are very short. But I would hope that the meeting there, the report that you do come up with, is something that is more at a macro level. And I really do hope that this continues for some time after May 15th, so that you will continue to have this committee inquiring into this area, so that we can come up with some kind of a solution should this come up again. And there's no question that a crisis will come up again, and it would be nice if the report covered that. And it is very important to all of us in the House. As far as the public health guidelines, we have been doing our best to make sure that it does take place. When it's done virtually, that is really up to the individual members. But in the House, sitting in the chair, I get to observe what's going on. And overall, everyone is staying at least 6 feet apart. We do have sanitary precautions taking place, but there are times when that 6 feet really does get a little bit smaller, and it is a concern. Overall, we're putting the guidelines out there, but it is up to the individual members when they are in the House to conform to the guidelines put out by the public health authorities.
Speaker. Thank you. And Mr. Robert, I'm going to sidestep you for a second, because my next question is to Mr. Patrice. Mr. Patrice, we have it on record that 55 staff members have been required at any given point of a normal sitting of Parliament, a reduced Parliament. We've had at least one session of the COVID-19 committee where all members were expected to participate. And then, of course, we've had several committee meetings, including this one. Can you advise the committee how many members are actually, how many staff members are in West Block when there is a virtual setting that takes place? What's the total number of members to support these meetings?
Thank you for the question. The exact number I will have to find about, because it varies, because it's not necessarily the West Block, because we also have staff members deployed in other locations. As you understand, in terms of the first special committee, virtual COVID special committee, we had a number of staff on standby that were communicating with members as the meeting was going on to address any potential or any actual technical issues that could occur during the meeting.
So could you guess then, Mr. Patrice, how many staff members would have been involved for a virtual sitting of Parliament last week?
I would say that it's about the same numbers, similar numbers to what is happening when you meet in person.
Okay, so
I would say it would be about the same.
So, Mr. Speaker, given the fact that it's the same number that would be required for a virtual sitting and the same number for an in-person sitting of Parliament, what's the need then to have a virtual sitting if we have virtual sittings on Tuesdays and Thursdays now, and then Wednesday, if the concern is for the staff, yet members are not there during the virtual sitting, but would be during the in-person sittings, why would we not then move to 3 sessions during that week if it takes the same amount of staff to have those type of meetings? You have to mute.
I think that question may not be for Mr. Patrice, but
no, it was for
the
Mr.
speaker.
It was for the speaker, yeah.
Is it 3 sessions virtual or 3 sessions personal?
So just to clarify now, we're having 2 virtual sessions, and one of the concerns that we've heard throughout this is the fact that it takes the amount of staff that's required to hold an in-person sitting. We just heard from Mr. Patrice that it takes the same amount of staff roughly for virtual meetings. If the members are there for only 1 day a week, why couldn't we keep them there for 3 days a week, when in fact it takes the same amount of staff to run those meetings?
Far over your time for questioning, Mr. Broussard.
I can reply that very quickly by actually, when we're looking at people's safety, I think we're looking at MP safety as well. And the idea of having a very limited group there on the Wednesday, I think the whole idea of having the virtual is having multiple people. The last thing we want to do is to regionalize it so that we only have people from the area who show up and represent their parties. One of the things that I am very concerned about is parliamentary privilege, and every individual MP has the right to represent his or her riding in Ottawa. And by doing, I'll continue on that later though.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we got the gist of that. Mr. Gerritsen, please.
Thank you. Just on that point, Mr. Speaker, is it safe to say or to assume that the number, that the level of engagement that those particular staff people would have on the Tuesday and Thursday is significantly less? Their exposure to the potential virus, their exposure would be significantly reduced on the Tuesday and Thursday because of the fact that there aren't all these extra people there?
Yeah, that would be a logical assumption. I think for something like that, to get the exact numbers, you would have to talk to someone in public health. Okay. But the fact that you're not in the same room, my assumption as a layman would be that, yes, you would have less chance.
I want to go a little bit to your letter to us and some of your questions over the protocols and visual backgrounds and stuff like that. I think that this is really important to get right. One of the things that I noticed from the very first sitting of Parliament was, at least the way it virtual Parliament, at least the way it displays on my screen, is that when the meeting began, there were 17 pages of thumbnails of video. And when it first began, only the very last page, one of 17 pages, was people who had shut off their video, because they all go to the end. By about 20 minutes into it, it was 7 or 8 where people had muted their video, like some people on this meeting are doing right now. What's your take on that? And does that concern you? You know, at least when somebody is in the house physically, you know that they're there. You have no idea when somebody mutes their video and their audio, for that matter, if they're even in the same room. Is that a concern? Do we need to address something around that issue?
Well, when you look at the House itself, when it's sitting, members have the right to walk out or stay in the room. And that's their prerogative. So for us to determine you have to be there when the questions are being asked or when proceedings are taking place, that's something that you may want to study as a committee. But what I would recommend is that it happens on virtual time, just like it does in-house time. So there's not much difference.
So our mandate here did not exclude us discussing voting virtually. How would we accomplish this when it comes to voting, given the fact that we know there's such an issue around people being in the house when it's time to vote?
That's something that we'll have to look at, or the committee will have to look at. And that's why I mentioned when I first started for Mr. Broussard is I'm hoping that this committee doesn't stop on May 15th with all the procedures, because we will have changes coming up and more crises coming up in the future. And if we take this crisis and actually learn and build on it, we might be able to improve not only virtual sitting, but actual sitting in the House when we return to normal.
So our objective and our mandate in this committee was to establish, some kind of virtual parliament in light of COVID-19. Would you say that it is, it could possibly be one of the recommendations of this committee that we recommend that further, more in-depth study is done into how to deal with this stuff, so that we can build a system to put in place that can be deployed on a moment's notice, a year, 2, 3 years from now, if necessary?
I would hope that that's the case. I mean, that's something that the committee has to determine what they want to study. What we're in right now is a crisis, and you've been brought together at this point because of the crisis. It doesn't mean the crisis isn't going to happen again. And if it does, I would hope that what we've learned right now, we can actually use in future crises. And like I mentioned just a few seconds ago, if some of that stuff that you come up with, some of the results that you come up with, we can transfer to the House and make it more operational and make it work more cohesively, I think it's or efficiently, I think it would be a real bonus coming out of this.
Right. I think I have a minute and a half. Miss May, would you like that minute and a half?
Unmute.
Would
Unmute.
definitely. Thank you. I have two quick questions. One is, Mr. Speaker, were you able to follow or have reports on our meetings with representatives from Wales, Scotland, and the UK? And if not, are you generally familiar with the approach that the UK Speaker has taken to what they call hybrid parliament, where some members are in person and some are on video screens?
I have not seen. I saw some of your proceedings, but that one was one that I wanted to, and I never got around to. Unfortunately,
It was fascinating. I'll just say quickly that the Speaker in the UK, just as you do, emphasized privilege and said there should be nothing that bars a member of Parliament from attending in person, except we don't want on public health advice for people to travel within the UK to try to get to London if they don't have to. So some members actually appear on large video screens and pose a question to ministers who are physically present in the House. Large video screens are present in the chamber at the same time as a few people are there physically. So it deals with this issue of whether some people are precluded from participating. And they do, of course, as you know, in the UK, the Speaker receives letters from members asking a question. Having just posed that to you, I don't know if you have any views on how doable that would be for our chamber.
Well, I think we're moving towards that, and if it's possible, I think we should go ahead with it as we make sure that technologically we can do that. The concern I do have, and that I've read about the chamber in Westminster especially, is how do you determine who is in the room, who is in the chamber? And I mean, what I don't want to see is something where, okay, it's not the individual members who decide whether they're in the House, but it's another party. And I mean party as someone else, not a political party, determining who is in there, especially when you start looking at people who are far away, people who are close. England is a very compact country compared to Canada, and it really does make a difference. So this virtual meeting, I think, will help people quite extensively, especially in rural and regional areas where they can come down. I remember you telling me about your trip taking a day and a half, which normally does not take a day.
Thank you, Speaker Rhoda. I did want to just interject, if I may, just for a moment. I'm not giving my preference on any of these recommendations, but I wanted to just state again that the study does include all ways that members can fulfill their parliamentary duties while the House stands adjourned over public health concerns caused by COVID-19. So voting could be included as a member's parliamentary duty. So I don't think it's necessarily precluded. In the order of reference, though, that was given on April 11th, the House did propose that the committee include the following elements of its study: temporary modifications of certain procedures, the third, sitting in alternate locations, and that was the second, and third, technological solutions, including a virtual parliament. So we're looking at all ways that members can complete their duties. And I just wanted to put that out there so that we have a frame of reference again as we're on our last meeting of witnesses, so that we can elicit the testimony that we wish to in order to go over the draft report and our recommendations, and of course any dissenting or supplementary opinions. Next up on the speakers list is, sorry, I just lost Madame Normandin, please.
Merci.
Thank you. I'd like to draw on this issue of parliamentary privilege. Ms. May already spoke about this, but I also had asked the question last week to other witnesses, but I'd like to hear what you have to say regarding the perhaps increasing of in-person sessions. Are we not going to impact parliamentary privilege? Some people who might have health problems, who are older and might be at greater risk. Answer, yes, it is a possibility, because in the past, if a person was not able to come to the House, to the chamber, it's not as if there was an external obstacle. It was the fact that a person couldn't arrive because there was a storm or they couldn't travel. It was in relation to what the Member of Parliament could not do. It was external. That's one thing. But when we talk about privilege and we're talking about an obstacle that's preventing the MP from doing his or her work in the chamber, that's the difference between the two. But it's something that's tremendously important. Question, could that be considered as being obstruction by Parliament, because Parliament controls the number of in-person sessions? So could it be considered to be a type of obstruction whereby we might increase or not the numbers of sessions? Answer, yes, that might be an argument put forward. I'd also like to know the ratio that we should have between a virtual session and an in-person session. And you say that you want to proceed gradually towards virtual sessions. How do you foresee that coming about? Answer, yes, at the outset we said we would proceed gradually so we could learn what we're doing well and not so well. Perhaps we won't attain perfection, but we want to get as close as possible. So when we're talking about increasing, we're talking about virtual sessions that would increase. It would be virtual or perhaps hybrid sessions. And so this is what the committee must decide and recommend to the House. Ultimately, it is the House that decides what we'll do. I'd also like to hear what you have to say in light of your experience at the last COVID-19 meeting. Do you see in a positive light the possibility that we might have debates on bills and have a question period? Answer, well, I'm convinced that this is something that will be possible over time, but there are restrictions based on the standing orders in the House. So we have to respect the two. Perhaps we might be able to interpret them a little bit more loosely, but in a way that works without changing the initial intent of the standing orders.
Savoir si vous avez déjà commencé à cogiter sur certaines situations qui peuvent arriver. Par exemple, quand on est en chambre, c'est assez rare qu'un député disparaisse comme ça, alors que ça peut arriver avec la connexion. Est-ce que vous avez commencé à réfléchir à quelles pourraient être les alternatives pour pallier à ce genre de situation-là au niveau de la procédure?
Définitivement, c'est quelque chose qui a été discuté, mais on n'a pas de solution comme c'est là. Parce que quand quelqu'un est en train de parler, comme disons tout d'un coup, je suis en
I think we've had...
If I disappear then, and then there's an issue.
We missed a part of the interpretation there. I was wondering if you could just repeat yourself and then we could have the interpreter follow the whole thought.
OK. L'intervention.
The question was if we've thought about what we could do in the House when someone disappears. It's something that happens every day. It's something we are thinking about, but I don't have any solutions right now. But it's obviously something that should be considered in the House procedures to ensure that if someone does disappear in the middle of a sentence, that we can bring them back and they'll be able to continue to ensure that everything operates correctly. Thank you. I'd like to hear what you have to say about the respect for the parliamentary timetable, the fact that virtual parliament should also have to respect the parliamentary calendar. We should be able to have sittings outside of the calendar as well. The parliamentary calendar does exist, it's there. And it'll be up to the House to decide on that. It's not a decision that is made by the Speaker. It's at the request of members to hold a sitting. It's not up to the Speaker to decide that. I'd like to know if you've already started to think about the possibility of changing the standing orders for certain votes. For example, someone asked a question last week for a confidence vote, for example, that could take place in person, but with a reduced personnel. Should this be considered valid or not? Could this happen or not? This is something, is it something that you've thought about since we are in a minority setting? This decision has to be made by the House. This is not something that the administration should decide. The standing orders that are in place were created quite some time ago. Some reflect the reality of 1867, and things have changed quite a bit since then. House rules have changed as well. So if you did want to change the standing orders, this is something that's up to the House to decide. If the House does want to hold votes, whether it's a confidence vote or not, it's up to them to decide on changes about what they want to have for the standing orders. I think that's all the time I had, Chair.
30 seconds there. So
J'aurais le temps de poser une question, mais
I could have asked a question, but I wouldn't have enough time for an answer, so I'll stop there.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you, and I thank all of you so much for being here with us today. And you know, the reality is, I go through this process. One of the things that I feel very strongly is the more we learn, the more questions I have. So I feel, you know, pretty strongly that this is not the end of the study. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to whether or not you would advise this committee to continue to do some of this work, noting that the reality is we could have a second or third wave of COVID-19, and we don't know what other potential challenges we may face in the future that would provide us an opportunity to look at a virtual parliament. So if you could speak to that, Mr. Speaker.
I encourage the committee to continue with this, to find alternatives, virtual or whatever else might come up. Certainly, and continue to look at what procedures we do have in the House. And actually, as I said earlier, there might be some spilling over into the House because if you do an in-depth study and find out what works, what doesn't work in other places, it's something that you can bring back here. When we look at the situation that exists now, you were given a very short time as a committee to come up with, I'm going to say, a macro level solution. Now, once that report comes in, there's implementation, and we're going to need more in-depth answers to that macro solution. So I would hope that the committee continues to look at what we have, how we can implement it, and how it's going to make not only virtual meetings better, but actual in-house meetings better as well.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I also just want to express my appreciation for you talking about the need in this pandemic for regional representation. And that's why virtual sittings are so important. You know, as a person from British Columbia that represents a fairly large and remote and rural riding, the realities in my riding are very specific. And I feel that it is my most important honor in this role to represent those voices. One of the things that we've also talked about is really needing sort of a framework of standing orders that if we ever hit a situation like this, it's something we can pull off the shelf, provides a great way for all the House officers to start having that negotiation and that discussion. I'm just wondering if you could talk about whether or not you think it would be appropriate to have standing orders that are ready for this kind of issue, and if there's recommendations from the Speaker's office and from the clerks around what specific challenges we may have in some of those standing orders.
There's no question right now, and that's what the standing orders are about. If you look, the standing orders that we have now are not the same standing orders we had back in 1867 when they were first put in place. So as time goes on, we modify things. And again, we are, the Parliament and the House of Commons is a creature of the House itself, the members. So as things go on, whether it's virtual or whether it's live, or a hybrid of some sort, those standing orders that you're going to suggest as a committee, or the House is going to, or the clerk and his staff will suggest, I would hope that working together, we can come up with something that works very well, so that next time something like this does happen in a crisis, we will be ready and ready to run.
So, you know, when we talk about the need to explore voting, and I think the other part that's come out in these meetings is the requirement for committees to even meet in camera and have a higher level of security. This is something that I'm concerned about in terms of voting as well. I want to make sure that voting is done as safely as it possibly can. So I'm just wondering, is there any work being done around looking at other ways of making sure that that level of security that we are not sure that Zoom has, especially around things like in-camera meetings and voting specifically for this study?
It's definitely something that's being looked at by our technical staff, and there are examples of technology that does exist out there. It's just a matter of taking it and modifying it so that it does work in Canada with our, like I said, our vast geography and our time zones as well. We do have 5 time zones. I don't envy MPs who come from BC to over here. I envy their weather in the middle of the winter. But other than that, having to travel to Ottawa and have that hour difference, now that makes it difficult. But as soon as you have a vote that might be at a certain time, and it really doesn't make sense in BC versus Newfoundland, that's something to consider as well. So it's something that we have to look at. And one of the other things that we have to look at, as I mentioned, the rules were mainly created in 1867, and we talked about Parliament, and that was basically an assembly of people. And that's what we were looking at, is bringing people together in one place. Now, what was the intent? Was it to have them physically there or have their minds there? And that's something that we have to examine and determine, is a physical presence necessary in order to vote, in order to speak, or is the person being there in spirit through virtual connection really good enough for what we are trying to accomplish? And that's something that we have to come to an agreement on. Right now, it is a physical presence in the chamber.
Well, and I'm a big fan of the physical presence. I think it's important for MPs from other parties to talk to each other. My last question really quickly is, right now we're in a minority government. And when we look at the level of collaboration that's been happening, I think all Canadians are feeling assured by that. But I'm wondering about structures in terms of making sure that that collaboration continues, whether or not it's a majority or minority government. Have you guys looked at that in any way?
That's all the time we have, but maybe we can get the answer to that in our other rounds. Next up, we have MP Tucker.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the presentation and the other clerks that are here today. My questions are around the contract with Zoom. How long has the House of Commons been working with this Zoom?
You know what? For this one, I think I'll defer to Monsieur Patrice or Monsieur Aubé. Monsieur Aubé, je vais vous laisser.
Mr. Aubé, I'll allow you to answer that question.
For the question, we've been working with Zoom over the last 6 weeks.
Do we have a contract with Zoom?
We have actually, I don't want to have a discussion on terms, but we actually have an agreement with them, a licensing agreement with them to use their products right now. We don't have a master agreement, as they would say in the IT field, with that company yet.
So who would have signed that contract then? Or that agreement?
I actually is responsible for the purchasing of the licenses that we made right now. I personally, if we would have a master agreement that would be put in place, it would be both the CFO and myself that would be the signing authorities usually for contracts.
What is the price of that agreement?
Currently, it's less than $10,000, sir.
10,000 for the year, or 10,000 for the month?
The current contract that we've put in place right now is on a monthly basis, sir. But we've established a contract to consume up to 10,000 right now. Like not a contract, but the agreement, licensing agreement.
So the agreement is it's up to $10,000 per month. If you renew it, it's another 10K.
Yeah.
Software companies like to build into different features and add-ons for end users. Have they expensed, or was there any other expense getting Zoom to its current state for us, other than outside the $10,000 we've been paying every month?
We've not incurred any additional costs from Zoom perspective. The costs have been related to modifying our infrastructure to integrate with any of the tools that we would have looked at, sir. And I'm just going to correct the $10,000 contract.
What are the other platforms?
We've looked at the existing portfolio platforms that we have at the House of Commons, such as Skype for Business. We've looked at Microsoft Teams also. We've also looked at Cisco WebEx, sir. These are the platforms that we had to assess after we were requested to consider doing virtual meetings.
So when I got elected, I was honored to take my seat as member for Saskatoon University. When I went through my computer training and got my Surface Pro and other devices, Zoom wasn't on there. So what has transpired that Zoom is a better platform than Skype, which was preloaded onto my Surface Pro?
So thank you for the question. I will just walk you through the process that we took to select Zoom for this purpose. As I just said, our first step was to evaluate our existing tools to make sure that they did or did not meet the multiple requirements that we have for committees. And we quickly found out that these platforms that we had right now could not meet some of the mandatory requirements to hold virtual meetings, such as built-in integration for simultaneous interpretation. Your previous witnesses talked about that. Also, the ability to enable 338 people in a meeting if it would be required. And also the ability to control the broadcast output in order for us to distribute to Canadians. Some of our existing tools didn't have these capabilities, and hence we needed to look at other products. And beyond that, we did extensive market research, liaised with international and national security partners. We consulted over 30 parliaments, sir. We consulted leading research institutions, security partners, and we also collaborate with existing parliaments that are using that platform. And hence, in order to meet these requirements, we brought different tools in our lab and assessed them. And one of the tools that we brought was Zoom. And we discovered that Zoom met all our requirements. It was easy to use in the context of what we need to do. And it supported all of the devices that we offer to members. And it is as secure as the other solutions that we have in our environment right now, sir, to hold meetings that are open to the public right now.
So it wouldn't be fair to say this isn't a sole source contract. You went through, like, was there like a bidding, or was there proposals written by other providers, or how did that roll out? So I understand that you evaluated all the ones that are out there, but did other providers provide a tender for this, or I guess a proposal for the tender?
For all the Microsoft products, sir, we have them on standing offers currently. We have them on contract, so we didn't need to actually purchase them.
Is there a point of order being raised by one of the members, Mr. Gerritsen?
Madam Chair, I was going to wait till Mr. Tucker was finished. I didn't want to interrupt him.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure whether it was a point of order. I'll get to you right after this then. You have about 30 more seconds, Mr. Tucker, just letting you know. Just
quickly,
not cutting
what
in.
were the other committees? Who else was on the committee that made the recommendation for Zoom? It wasn't probably just yourself. Who were the other individuals that made
It's
the
members from my team, sir, that were engaged in the assessment of the different platforms, and they made the recommendation to me to go ahead with this tool. And I made the decision to move forward, recognizing the schedule and recognizing that I had the authority to be able to purchase that tool for the consumption as we are using it right now, sir.
That's the end of my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. And Mr. Gerritsen.
Just on a point of order, Madam Chair, Mr. Obey was about to correct himself on some information, but then he never got that out. I believe it was in reference to the $10,000 thing. Would it be appropriate to allow him to correct himself?
Thank you,
Mr. Obey, is that correct?
Yes, I wanted to correct that. It's actually it was actually for 3 months the initial purchase, so it was $3,000 a month, and which comes out to a little bit close to $10,000. So I wanted to clarify that.
Okay, well, thank you. That's important to have that clarification on the record. Next up, we have Mr. Turnbull.
Hi all, thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks to our witnesses again. It's good to always see you. I learned this morning, I was reading the Samara Center for Democracy report, and I noticed that they mentioned right at the beginning that during the Spanish flu, there was about a 10-month period where Parliament didn't meet during that time because of the pandemic. And reflecting on this, I thought, how we've made major improvements. The fact that we've used digital technology, information technology, quite seamlessly from my perspective to date to perform many of the roles and duties that we have. With that said, I wondered if Mr. Speaker could tell me how many people logged on to Zoom for the first special committee meeting that was hosted virtually.
I believe the upper limit was 309. There was just under 290 some, or actually there was just about 290 who were actual MPs. Of course, we had staff and backup on board, and even with all the 309, had we had 338 and upwards, I believe it would have went rather smoothly. So I was very impressed with the way it proceeded.
I was as well, and I guess all 309 of those individuals did not have any health risk associated with meeting that day, right?
That would be my assessment as well.
Great. As opposed to meeting in person, which would definitely have some health risk associated with it. My second question is, how many issues were reported on that day where 309 MPs joined in?
Well, we had 13 altogether. And 8 of them were choice of the channel. And what we've done is we've made some modifications. If you notice now, if you want to speak English, you're on the English channel. If you want to speak French, you're on the French channel. And when I was giving my speech, it was a little bit of a pause in between, but it seems to have worked. There was a third channel where it was floor, and it would recognize whether it was French or English. And the interpretation, and it has something to do with the software. It's the program itself, and it's something they're working on. So we may come to that with time. So that was 8 of the issues where, and what seemed to happen is about 70% of the people were working fine on the floor level. But 30%, there would be some interference where they would be speaking English and there was English translation or French translation, and it really was bothering about, I'd say about 30% of the people involved. Another 5 was sound. Again, I encourage everyone to use the headset like I have. I notice some of you are using your own, and some of you aren't using any at all. Or one of you, I guess, and I'll leave it at that, and I won't name any names. But I would encourage you to get a hold of your IT ambassador and see about getting one with a boom that comes in and actually makes a difference when it's being said. And again, with the people who were in earlier, the interpreters who were in earlier, it's not only for the MPs' health, it's for theirs as well. And one person had an echo on their channel, and there was some video problems there. But overall, everything worked fairly well.
Thank you very much. And could I just ask briefly, for a brief answer on this, were all of those minor technical issues resolvable?
They were, and I'm hoping we'll know tomorrow better, Mr. Turnbull, whether they were resolved or not. But I believe so, and they're fairly simple fixes, but it's a matter of figuring out what they are so that we can fix them.
Great, thank you. And it seems to me we're on a path from maybe more. We're sort of on a continuum here of achieving maybe down the road a more fulsome and formal proceeding of the House. And we started off, and many parliaments seem to follow a similar path around the world, where they're starting off with committee meetings, which are smaller in number, maybe easier to start with. And they're moving to, special scrutiny sessions or proceedings, which I think we're having with their COVI special committee. And we can move down the line on that continuum. How far do you think we can go, Mr. Speaker?
That's a good question. I mean, right now I'm looking down the road. Can we have a full parliamentary session virtually? I think eventually we will get there. Are we ready to do that now? Technologically, I believe we can do it. Our rules, unfortunately, are in place, and they are the rules of the House. And we have to contend with those rules in order to make sure that they are flexible enough to allow virtual meetings.
Thank you. And I remember Siwan Davies from the Welsh National Assembly said, "Where there is a political will, there is a way." And I really related to that comment. The other thing that I wanted to ask you to dive a little deeper, in your opening remarks, you talked about maybe some of the decision-making functions of the House being more dependent or more closely connected to physical presence. I wonder if you could mention what decision-making functions you were referring to specifically, and then I want to ask you another question if I have time.
Well, the big one here is the vote that takes place in the House, and there is rules in place that state that members have to be in the House when the question is read, and they have to be in the House in their seats until they leave. So, I mean, that is something that we have to contend with. So we will have to look at that and determine how we want to do that. And I encourage this committee to look at the different possibilities. And what I'm looking forward is to the recommendations that this committee will come up with as well. Considering the changes that could happen and what's happening now in the House when the votes take place, this could have different options for future parliaments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's all the time we have. Next, Mr. Richards. For 5 minutes, please.
You're on mute.
You're just on mute, Mr. Richards. Okay, perfect.
Oh, it was actually there was an equipment problem there, so we've been able to fix it. So anyway, sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. And let me just, I'm not sure, like Mr. Speaker, maybe it'll be yourself. Maybe you'll have to turn to some of your officials, but that's fine. I'll let you determine who's best qualified to answer. Just in regards to the security aspects of our virtual sittings, I suppose. Have you been working, or has the administration been working with the communications security establishment in the development of the platform that's being used for these proceedings?
Yes, I'll pass that over to Monsieur Obi. He can answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Madam Chair. Yes, we have been consulting with the national security agencies, sir.
Okay. So it was reported by CBC, I think it was last week, with regards to Zoom, and this is a quote. They have not been approved for any government discussions by the CSE. So obviously we've moved forward. We're using Zoom. This is the decision that was made. Can you tell us, did CSE caution you against that? What was their thoughts and recommendations on the use of Zoom?
So we, in our discussion with the national security partners, sir, we always do risk assessments for products that we want to use. And in our discussions, recognizing that these are public meetings and recognizing that the Zoom platform enabled us to implement the security controls that are required for a public meeting, we felt comfortable that we can move forward with this platform. And this was the best choice for these types of meeting at this point, sir.
Okay, sure. So you felt comfortable, but what was their advice? Because I mean, it sounds like based on this, what was reported in the media, that they didn't really feel it was something that should be approved. So what kind of advice did you receive from CSE?
The advice that we have received is that we need to put the proper security controls in place, sir.
Okay,
and we did, sir.
So what types of controls were they suggesting needed to be put in place?
Well, without getting into the specifics, sir, because if you'd want to do that, we'll go in. I'd like to request that we have to go in camera, but I can certainly share at a high level some of the
let's
things.
Start with that, and then we can always make a decision if we need to do anything further. But
so, concept of virtual waiting rooms, sir, so that all participants can be cleared. So before someone participates or enters a meeting, they need to be vetted through their credentials, so that we know who's in the waiting room, sir. These are examples. That we authenticate the participants using House of Commons authorization servers, so that the authentication is done through our infrastructure and we know who's participating into the meeting. That we use Canadian data centers, like they do have a Toronto and a Vancouver data center, where the traffic and our data is hosted for these particular meetings. These data centers are owned by Amazon, and that we also do some geofencing, sir. These are examples of recommendations and discussions that we shared with our partners, and not only CSEC, but we're always in discussion with many partners. We also have discussions with international partners, sir. Also,
sure. So with these, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but just also we have limited time. With these measures in place, did CSE feel comfortable at that point that and recommend that it would be okay to proceed with those specific measures in place?
Yes, they did, sir.
They did. Okay. I've heard that last, and this may not be for you. I mean, if you're the best person qualified, fine. Whoever it is, go ahead and jump in. But I've heard that the Board of Internal Economy met, I think it was last week, and they used Skype. And it was kind of apparently a pretty convoluted arrangement where some of the participants actually had to use two different devices simultaneously to be able to participate. Wondering why Zoom wasn't used as a platform like we've been using in the committees, and why that was chosen instead.
Okay, well,
something for you, or
yeah, I can answer, sir, if you want to, Mr. Speaker. Would you like me to answer this?
Maybe I'll just start off and then I'll hand it over to you for the answer. The meetings we have right now are public meetings.
Just quickly.
Okay, you know what, Monsieur Obi, I'll let you finish it off.
Okay.
You'll have all the technical.
So
20 seconds, please, if you can.
20 seconds. So because of the nature of the debates during these types of meetings, sir, we have not assessed Zoom for that particular profile of risk and that profile of threat tolerance yet. This is something that we're going to be doing in the future. While Skype for Business is within our infrastructure, and we felt that we wanted to use that.
What does that then do
That's
for like
all the time we have?
Committees?
Next,
like how would we deal with an in-camera situation?
Maybe you can. Maybe we can go. We'll have enough time to maybe go a little bit further, and so you might be able to get that question in.
Sure, thanks, Madam Chair. I think it is a pretty important question, so I do hope we have a chance.
Absolutely.
We do have to understand how we'll deal with in-camera sessions if we're going to use this.
Perhaps even it may come up with one of the other questioners, but I've given so much leeway. I feel like that's all I can give now. Okay. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Algabra.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I want to thank the speaker and the others who are present here today. Mr. Speaker, I have a question for you regarding standing orders. Obviously, if we want to move ahead with virtual sittings, further advancing our virtual sittings, we need to change some standing orders. Is it possible to create a category of standing orders that would only be triggered under an emergency or a special situation rather than changing our traditional standing orders?
I'm going to defer this one to our clerk, who has a very in-depth knowledge of the standing orders and can answer it probably more in depth than I can. Monsieur Robert.
Mr. Agabra, the simple answer is yes. And again, it really depends on what the House chooses to do through this committee. If you feel that the pandemic crisis that we are confronting now requires some consideration for the possibility that it could come again, that may be an opportunity for you to package some rules and practices that would be triggered by the event arising, and then allowing the House to function in a way that would respect social distance and allow as many members to participate with bearing in mind health safety concerns.
Yeah, because I'm thinking just like what a lot of the provinces and municipalities and even the federal government, they have things like state of emergency, and once you declare a state of emergency, it triggers certain rules. So I guess it's good to know that we have that option. The other question I have is for changing standing orders. What are the rules? Does it require unanimous consent?
Not historically, no.
So, a simple majority of parliamentarians can change standing orders.
Yes, indeed.
Obviously, the preference for all of us here is to reach unanimous consent, but it's important to know ahead of time the rules as we are discussing amongst ourselves what options we have.
That's correct.
What are the obstacles, technical obstacles that are before us right now if we were to choose to go virtually, fully virtual?
Well, I think the speaker actually referenced that, and perhaps you might want to go back to it. The idea of how we want to vote. That's a critical element of procedure. It's really the purposes for the debates you have, the deliberative aspect. We feel comfortable that the current rules, as the speaker indicated in his presentation, work reasonably well, and the adaptation would be not too difficult. But voting perhaps is a bit more challenging.
But that's just to clarify, that's not necessarily a technical infrastructure aspect. We could choose to change voting rules to make sure that the person, that the member of parliament is seen on screen and that is present during the vote. So it's not necessarily a technical aspect. It's more of a procedural aspect. Is that correct?
Yes, was something we have to remember that in the rules, the member of parliament has to be physically in the House to make that vote. So to make it now with what the parties have agreed to do amongst themselves, they could pass it. I would not sure I would feel comfortable with that, but that's something that the House has the right to do. We would, if we were to have everyone vote, we would have to open the House and have everyone come in to make those changes or to vote on those changes. And that's one of the things that has to be considered right now with the pandemic that's out there. And how safe is it and how prudent is it to bring everyone into that chamber so that they can vote, where they won't be standing 6 feet apart, and there will be body fluids being spread around in the room or breathing around that I'm not sure would be a safe way of doing it, but that would be the way that would have to happen.
Well, it can be adopted on division, couldn't it be?
I'll let the clerk answer this one. I believe Yeah, I'll let
Yeah,
him.
there are several ways of doing it. You can do it basically with on division. You can, but you always can escalate. That's the real issue. And there are no rules in place that prevent the escalation. And members have the right to vote in a way that clearly demonstrates how each member in the House who's participating in the vote chooses to vote.
Right. I guess to adopt it on division, you need unanimous consent.
Well, actually, you don't have unanimous consent if you're adopting it on division.
No, to accept it on division without, I meant the process of adopting it.
You would just need to have less than 5. You'd have to have less than 5 members rising to request a recorded division.
Right.
Okay, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much. Ms. May, you have either a point of order or?
Well, I was hoping to ask a brief question around the voting issue, if it could be squeezed in, Madam Chair.
I was also thinking that I do want to discuss the work plan that our analyst Andre has put out for us a little bit, but we do have enough time to do that and perhaps give 2 to 3 minutes to each party for one last round. And we can, if it's okay with everybody, we can squeeze Ms. May in right there and give her the opportunity as well. Is that okay? All right, so Ms. May, we'll put you after the NDP, and we'll go through our regular round 1 with each party getting, I guess at this point, 2 minutes each, so that we all have time to discuss what Andre has in his work plan for us. Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Richards, this gives you an opportunity to finish up on your questioning if you'd like to be the one going for the Conservatives for 2 minutes.
Sure, I'll take that opportunity, and we'll see how many of my colleagues choose to be upset with me later. But I would like to maybe just follow up a little further on that, where we were with the idea that it sounded like the issue that there was. I guess we don't have video going here. Sorry about that. I think that should be better. Okay. So the issue of in-camera meetings. Obviously, there are times in committee, and it even arose in my previous round of questioning that if we wanted to explore something further, we may need to go in camera. And it sort of seemed to be that what I was hearing was that we would have difficulty with Zoom being able to do an in-camera type of a setting for meetings. I think it also applies to things like caucus meetings. I know that caucus meetings, I think there hasn't been able to be, or internal caucus meetings of various types, there hasn't been able to be interpretation or things like that. I wonder if you could speak to that, like if we were to proceed with these types of meetings, how would we deal with the in-camera nature of things? How would we deal with caucus meetings and these kinds of things for proper security?
At this time, Skype is approved for in-camera meetings, and the meeting that we had for the Board of Internal Economy was in camera, and that's why we had to shift to the Skype. What we're doing right now with Zoom is something that's very public and out there, so that everyone can see what's going on in Parliament or in this virtual COVID-19
so sorry,
committee.
Mr. Speaker, just knowing the shortness of time we have, I just want to explore a little. So then, like, what about with caucus meetings where you'd have a larger number of participants? And then what about situations where in the middle of a committee, there's a need to go in camera first because a subject comes up where we have to switch over to be in camera quite quickly? I understand in the Board of Internal Economy instance what happened, but what about in those kinds of instances? How would this work?
At this time, if there's a meeting that foresees something like an in-camera necessity, then I would recommend going with Skype. That would be the way to go. As far as
for caucus meetings and those kinds of things, then?
you know what, you'd have to. That's a party issue. I'm not sure I'm qualified to comment on that. You would have to consult with your party, and the individual parties would determine what platform they use.
Okay,
that's all the time we have.
It's not Parliament itself that determines what kind of platform.
Next up, we have Ms. Pettypat Taylor from the Liberals, please.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. My question would be for Monsieur Patrice. During our last week, we had a number of witnesses that appeared before a committee, and we had one individual by the name of Chantal Bernier. She was with Global Privacy and Cybersecurity Group. And a part of her questions, she talked about the issue of cybersecurity, but she also entered an area where she talked about our employees and ourselves working out of home. And she talked about making sure that we respect privacy-related areas when working at home. I'm wondering if the House administration has been looking at establishing some guidelines for ourselves and our staff when it comes to working from home.
We do provide, if it's in general, we do provide communication and guidance documents, and also do some webinar with respect to working at home and adapting. We've been looking also at providing ergonomic equipment and so on, and allowing staff to use their equipment. If it's relating to cybersecurity in terms of the privacy, in terms of the surrounding, I think because I had that same discussion with Mr. Obey, but I'll ask Mr. Obey to answer in relation of the VPN and what it means in terms of direct access, in terms of using personal equipment, but to link to our network. Mr. Obey, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as part of our mobile strategy at the House that we've been implementing over the last 3 years, we do have security best practices that we provide to people that work from home, and they're basically founded on the ISO standards 27N1, 27N2, without getting into the technical details. So there's specific controls, specific ways to use our device that we put in place in order to interact with the House of Commons resources. So this is the way that we do. So we implement these best practices. We also provide equipment that have these controls in place. And we also provide, as Mr. Patrice said, some awareness, and we provide some training also to the employees that would like to work. So if ever there's a specific requirements, Madam Fitzpatrick, like we're more than willing to engage with every MP staff and communicate that and make them aware of that.
Thank you, Mr. Ubey. Next up, we have Madame Normandin.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. My first question for Mr. Aubin, perhaps. I'd like to know if spontaneously, is there some support provided for caucus meetings that need a higher level of security? Yes, we had discussions with the caucus. However, what we said with the caucus is that it's the same security issue we've had with in-camera meetings. When people use a tool, they really have to understand the sensitivity of the nature of the information that they're going to discuss. They have to understand what information will be exchanged during the meeting and the nature of it. If these three factors increase the risk of these discussions, we recommend using the tools such as Skype for Business, because these ones were evaluated in terms of the House's needs. If Skype for Business is a tool that ensures our infrastructure that's not in the cloud can be properly controlled and used. However, I don't want to say that the other tools aren't safe. They just haven't been evaluated to date for our specific needs. If you want to have sensitive discussions with sensitive information, we recommend right now to not use those tools, to use the tools that we recommend. Thank you. Quickly, from Mr. Speaker, you said that there were a certain number of technical issues that took place during the virtual parliament. However, the day before, there were other committees that sat. Did you receive information saying that there were issues during those committees? And generally, things went rather well. There's always some small issues, but there was nothing major that was brought forward to date. Things continued to go well. Perfect. Thank you. Do I have time for another question? Sorry.
Right on time. Ms. Blaney, please, for 2 minutes.
Well, thank you for that, Madam Chair. I think, I was talking when I last asked the question about the reality of being in a minority government and what this could look like in a majority government and how to keep that connection. I know that as a House officer, we meet when we're in the House once a week and we go over what's going to be happening in the House for the next upcoming week. I'm just wondering about those kind of structures to continue the level of collaboration.
That's something that happens between the parties themselves and the House leaders. Now, it's actually quite refreshing to see the House leaders work together and come together with a certain amount of agreement. So, but I hope you continue to do that.
So one of the things that you brought up, Mr. Speaker, in your report was the 35 seconds may need to be reviewed in terms of question. Could you just give us a little bit of feedback on that? And then the last thing, if there's time, is what are the most important standing orders that we need to modify to have a virtual parliament?
Okay, I'll answer the first part of it, then I'll hand it over to the clerk who can talk about the standing orders specifically. Something that happens with the committee, and we do have committees of the whole, and we do have emergency debates where the committee meets, and there's actually a 5-minute question where you actually have exchange between the person asking the question and the person answering the question. This allows for more in-depth questions to be asked and more in-depth answers to be given. And what happens is I think we get a lot better debate that way, as opposed to what we have now where we have a 35-second question and a 35-second answer, which turns out to be more of a gotcha session on both sides, so regardless of who's asking or who's answering. And this was brought into place into the late 90s when we had 5 parties, and it was time to, they were trying to give people more chances to ask questions. So by extending the amount of time that the questions are being asked, that allows them to go in depth and actually give us, I believe, a better performance on the floor. And it's something that I'm asking this committee to look at, not only on virtual, but also on the floor of the House of Commons when question period takes place.
Thank you. That's all the time we have. And maybe, Ms. Blaney, we can wrap up with that second part of your question, because I do think it's important for all the parties. Perhaps I can make it my question. I haven't asked any questions throughout any of the proceedings. So we'll move on with Ms. May for now. And maybe we can get a summary from our clerk as to what standing orders we should be specifically focusing on for our report.
Madam Chair, how much time would it?
You have 2 minutes, Ms. May.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay. Well, to the speaker, just parenthetically, because it's come up so often, it was interesting to hear that in the UK, for security reasons, their cabinet is meeting by Microsoft Teams, and we haven't talked about that very much yet. But the Parliament is basically meeting by Zoom. But the question I wanted to put to Mr. Speaker is, we heard from Scotland, Wales, and the UK, and what struck me was that the current voting, barring pandemic, nothing to do with pandemic, the current ways in which Scotland, Wales, and the UK vote is much freer than our rules, which require, I think, the most archaic in the Commonwealth, standing at your desk and being there at the moment of voting and until the vote is counted. So that there's electronic voting to your desk in the UK and in Scotland and Wales. And the British parliamentarians, British members of Parliament actually walk through outer lobbies to register a vote outside of the House. And I'm wondering if any of that combination of voting from other parliaments suggests to you a direction we might go, leaving aside the question of how we approve it in a pandemic.
This is certainly something that the committee should look at, not only for virtual, but also for all the rules in the House. I mean, I would encourage the committee to explore the possibilities that are out there and how we can bring them back. I mean, it will require longer time to ensure a recommendation is well thought out, but certainly consider the changes not only to virtual, but like I said, make it look at electronic voting within the House, where it would be a lot quicker and more efficient to all members push the button and make sure there would have to be some security. And like I say, there's a lot more thought that has to go into it. But it's certainly something that I would encourage the committee to consider and look at.
If I have any time left, I'd turn to the clerk and ask what would be the specific standing orders that we would have to change to move to virtual parliament, asking Rachel's question again.
Well, it's a rather difficult question to answer in such a short limited amount of time available.
Well, it was going to be my question as well, so you have 2 minutes to answer.
Well, that's more than enough, I suppose. I think, in fact, there are two aspects that we need to consider. How you want to do the voting system, that would be one, and there would be a gamut of rules that might be changed with respect to that. The other one that was raised during the course of this meeting was the trigger mechanism that allows you to go to the virtual option. And what that could be done by having a rule in place that allows for a fixed time debate that would be triggered perhaps by a minister, and you would allow for a certain amount of time to debate the issue, to determine the merits of such a step, and then have a vote that would take place at the end of that process. That might be one consideration for you to bear in mind when you look how a virtual sitting program might be actually implemented and carried out post this current pandemic.
Anything else? You have another minute.
Oh, that's extraordinary. Oh, well, no, the clerk has the other minute. I don't have any more.
Clerk. Yes, the clerk. If you'd like to have any last words for us before we look at our draft report and make recommendations.
Well, I think that the approach that you've taken so far to be gradual and slowly become adapted to the technology is very important. There are some members who are rightly dissatisfied with the risk that comes into being if the technology is not really satisfactory. And that, I think, has to be taken into account. Once that hurdle is cleared, then it's really for you to decide how you want to adapt the current rules with respect to issues like notice, the structure of the order paper, how other information is conveyed to you through your devices. There are all sorts of features that involve technology, which I'm not particularly good at, that might be part of the rules that need to be changed to make a virtual parliament a comfortable environment for all the members.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the clerk, to the speaker, to, of course, the law clerk, the entire team. It's been a real pleasure to have you here today, and you've given us a lot of insight for our report. So I guess as far as the witnesses are concerned, you can definitely sign off at this point, but if I could ask the rest of the committee members to hold on just for a little while longer. We have until 5 o'clock, and I wanted to just discuss a few things regarding the work plan moving forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Duncan, you have a point you'd like to address? Mr. Duncan, go ahead. Oh, Mr. Duncan is gone. Maybe he was waving by rather than waving to get in a point of order. Hopefully we can get Mr. Duncan back on. I don't know if the other Conservative members can maybe message him and let him know that his input would be needed to move forward. Okay, well, maybe it's okay if you guys are good to speak on his behalf. I just wanted to find out if you had a chance to look at the table of contents that was provided by Andre. Andre, do you want to walk us through a little bit of this? I guess before we even go through this, I'd like to set out or let you all know that we have a full meeting on Thursday to look at the draft report. By Friday, by the end of this week, it would be ideal if we could get the recommendations from each of the parties. I know that's a very tight time frame, and it doesn't give you a lot of time to look at the draft report, but maybe Andre can walk us through some of the steps of what would help him in order to be able to produce the draft for next week for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a lot to say. Hopefully, the table of contents made sense to everyone. Really, the only thing I would add is that about 26 pages of testimony has been sent to the translators. But it's just testimony. It's trying to capture what the committee heard. If the committee wanted to make recommendations, you could look at the table of contents and try and slot in where your recommendations could go, and they can go anywhere in the report. The beginning, the end, the middle, wherever you feel like where it would fit. It's kind of difficult to describe in the abstract what is in the report, but hopefully, but without actually giving you a copy of the report, but hopefully you can look at the table of contents and get a sense for what the structure of it, the direction of it, what would be in the report at present, and not to continue to ramble, but whatever members would like to see in the report that isn't in the report, it's your report. More than happy to add it, if that helps as a starting point.
Andre, when will you be able to get the first version of the draft report to us? Will that be tomorrow or?
So translation has received a draft report that has testimony that doesn't include today's meeting, but Thursday's meeting and Wednesday's meeting. They have not got back to me and Justin to let us know what they'll be able to provide us for Thursday's meeting. But they've had 17 pages of it for over a week. It's whether or not that they can include the 9 pages that were added this weekend, this morning.
Okay, so most likely we'll have at least 17 pages of it by our Thursday meeting.
Yes, it should cover, it certainly should cover, I would hope it would cover everything except for Wednesday and Thursday of last week, but it might even include Wednesday and Thursday of last week.
That would be excellent. So our next meeting is on May 7th, and it's from 11 to 2. The whole meeting is going to be a consideration of the draft report. So we can, the committee can choose how we wish to go about going through it. We could go through it line by line, make proposals for recommendations, or just talk it out and then have our proposals submitted by the Friday. But we could talk about that at the beginning of Thursday's meeting. I just wanted to put the ideas out there so that you're thinking about them and you come having thought it through for Thursday's meeting and prepared. Yes, Ms. May.
Thank you. As a non-member of the committee, and I've been so grateful for the latitude and generosity of so many members to let me participate, is there a useful way in which I could submit notes to Andre or have access to the draft report to submit thoughts in time for Thursday's meeting? I've been pulling together a sort of a framework of analysis for myself, and I don't know if that would be of use to the committee. I would like to be helpful.
Any comments from any of the members on that? Just a moment. Maybe we can hear from the clerk on that.
I'm kind of a policy nerd. I love Parliament, so if I can help, I'd love to.
Okay, so Justin's going to help us out with the answer to that.
Yes, hello, Madam Chair. It's Justin, the clerk of the committee. So the short answer would generally be that it would be up to the committee to make a decision like that. Now, as members of the committee know, that consideration of a draft report and any decisions related to its contents would be for the permanent members to make, or any member properly substituted for a permanent member. So in terms of decision making, unless Madam May was substituted for one of the permanent members, would not be something that would generally be envisioned. However, committee can always make a decision to share the draft report with another member or with Madam May. There would be nothing either stopping Madam May from making suggestions to the committee if she so wanted to send suggestions into the committee for the committee to then consider and accept or reject.
And I'm happy to receive those recommendations.
Thank you. Well, if it's all right, I mean, I don't think the committee may want to discuss it with me online, so I'm going to leave so you have freedom to discuss. But I'd love to see the draft, and I would love to know the best email address to send some thoughts, knowing that it's not going to be translated, and that it would be, I hope, useful in framing what we might want to do with the report. And I thank you again. I think I should leave in case you want to take a decision of whether I can see the draft. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. May. And you could always send me an email as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Just to sum up, I just wanted to remind everybody we're going to have 2 total meetings to consider the draft report and then adopt the draft report. So that will be this Thursday and then the coming meeting, which is either the 12th or the 11th. And after that time, there's going to be a very tight time frame to submit supplementary or dissenting opinions. Those supplementary or dissenting opinions can not be longer than 10 pages or the same length of the initial report, which we know is going to be longer than 10 pages in this case. So you're fine with that. It'll be no longer than 10 pages in this circumstance. And so that's about it. Does everybody understand that that's what we're looking at in the next couple of meetings?
Yes, and Madam Chair, I don't know if there's a moment for me just to ask a couple of quick questions about the outline. The first one is I'm just checking to see, is there a section that includes the platforms that we're discussing and the confidentiality part? I just want to make sure. And then the other part around the guiding principles, regional representation, I'm just wondering if that's captured in one of these categories. Thank you.
Well, regional representation seems to be a very important consideration. Andre, can you respond to whether that could be included?
Yes, Sarah, I'm just trying to flip back and forth between the document and the screen. The technological part will be under ensure digital security of proceedings, and for the regional representation, it'd be ensure accessibility of proceedings. Would be the 2 places where I would look to put that information.
Is that okay, Ms. Blaney?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Any other comments or feedback on the table of contents so far? Okay. All right, then. We will see each other on Thursday to go through the draft report. Thank you so much to all the members. Have a good evening.